Scotch. Oh.
Welcome back to the Bourbon and BS podcast, everyone. I am Steve Crane. I am joined by Nate Hale and our lovely sponsor friend and well-dressed rep from Altadis USA. Is that?
Altadis USA.
Yeah, it's official, right? Josh
Absolutely.
Bentley. Josh Bentley, everyone.
Thank you for having me back. Two weeks in a row.
Just
How about that?
Double take of it. It's fantastic.
Yeah. But it's a special launch, but it's also a special night.
It is.
Why, Steve? Tell us.
It's Wednesday.
There you go.
No, it's Whiskey Wednesday. We've got a fantastic brand new cigar. We're going to be reviewing the Monte Cristo 1935 anniversary, 85th anniversary, correct?
Yes, yeah. Commemorating 85 years of Monte Cristo as a brand.
So we'll be going over that. We've got Basil Hayden's 10-year bourbon. We've got some other cigars from Altadis. So again, sponsor Altadis USA. We've got the Monte Cristos. We also have a pack here, AJ Fernandez collab set. The Upman, Nicaragua, the Monte Cristo, Nicaragua. We got the Trinidad Espiritu. We got the Aging Room, Nicaragua, which was a cigar of the year, reigning cigar of the year.
Yep.
And the Romeo y Julieta Reserva Real, Nicaragua, the Onyx Bold, Nicaragua. So powerhouse sampler there, which is also, oddly enough, available at our other sponsor, Tinder Box at Easton in Columbus, Ohio.
Yep.
They're carrying that sampler along with many other Altadis samplers. I've been spotlighting those on the Tinder Box page, on the Instagram and Facebook. Check that out. Follow us, all that good stuff. And then also BS Cigar Company. Appreciate the support. I've got a half smoked BS Gold to my right. And also, certainly not least, is the patreon.com/Bourbon and BS podcast. That's a way that you guys can actually support us on a monthly, or you can do a one-time thing. Get a hold of us if you have any questions, but this is a way that you can support us with $5 tier, $10 tier, $25 tier, whatever you actually want to do. And then you get a t-shirt after a certain amount of time. I know Ian is already watching, I believe. So Ian, I should have the order for the 3X and other shirts first of the year. So we're going to place that. So it should be a couple weeks after that. I do want to also say, doing some prototypes. I've been kind of showing those off a little bit, but tonight I am also wearing, for those of you on audio, definitely can't see this, but I've got the I think we're gonna do maybe March
Green Beer Day,
the Patty's Day version of the shirt.
Nice.
Shannon's in love, I can tell already. So yeah, we're gonna be doing some more stuff. It should be an exciting year for the podcast, I think. And all that good stuff being said, we have another surprise. If you guys are not following us on social media, definitely do that. Facebook Live on 7:30 p.m. on Wednesdays, 7:30 Eastern. But we have surprise guests tonight, returning guests coming from St. Louis. We have Bourbon and Blondes joining us here.
Hi.
Hello.
Ladies, how are you?
Great. How are you?
Good.
Fantastic.
Good. I love your beginning spiel of the night. It's my favorite thing.
Why is that?
I don't know. You're just like, you have it so down pat. I always mess up ours, so we have to re-record it. So I
purely winging it every time.
Plus you have a voice that like could tell bedtime stories. It's like
true.
You know.
That's exactly what I was going to say. That sexy voice. That's what it is.
Uh-huh.
Welcome to the Bourbon.
Like
we just have them read the back labels of the bottles and just
something like that.
That should be a Patreon level membership.
Yeah.
Or you just read the labels to us.
Or an OnlyFans page. Whatever happens first.
$20 is $20.
Right? Doesn't matter how you earn it.
Onlyfans.com, Bourbon and BS podcast.
Listen to Steve.
Patreon or OnlyFans, whatever you guys want to join us on.
Whatever your spice of life is, you know?
I'll take care of it. All right, ladies, you guys have, what are you guys drinking? I know we had an issue, throw you under the bus. We had an issue opening bottles today. Is this
Alaina had the issue, technically.
Yeah. I have a lot of issues, but that was this morning's specifically issue.
There we go.
Basil Hayden Rye, 10 years, what we've got.
Yep.
Okay. Alaina, did I spell your name right on there?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'm looking at it. It looked wrong. Anyways, it's going to be awkward if it was up there the entire time.
That's okay.
Wouldn't be the first time, though.
Yeah.
Right. Abby, I think I nailed yours as well, right?
What if I told you it was wrong?
3 B's.
No,
3
just
Bs.
2 Y's.
2 Y's. Perfect.
Abby.
All right. So, if you don't mind, ladies, we're going to start with the cigar. You want to do that here first
Sure.
while
Yeah.
we're smoking it a little bit? You give us some information, then we can come back to it as we get into the cigar here. Sorry we didn't get you guys the cigars this time.
It's okay.
Probably didn't want to have the windows open anyways this time of year.
My
True.
window is still open, but it's fine. I'll pretend it's not.
Fair. That's
Yeah.
fair.
Yeah.
So this week just dropped the Monte Cristo 1935 anniversary Nicaraguan series. This cigar, as Steve said before, commemorates 85 years of Monte Cristo as a brand. So it's something definitely special. It comes in 4 sizes. I'll just kind of go over it real quick. The Toro, the number 2, a Churchill, and then a new demi size. It's a 5.5 by 44. Boxes of 10 except for the demi size. The demi size comes in a 20 count.
Okay.
This special blend was put together. Rafael Nadal, the famed Grupo de Maestros, and then powerhouse AJ Fernandez. And
So all three groups?
3 of them
Jeez.
got together and blended this. This is very special. It was a couple years in the making.
So AJ, Rafael, and who? I'm sorry.
The
I'm
group
Grupo
of
de
them.
Maestros.
Oh, yes.
So between them, that's what, like 300 years of experience in the industry?
Over 300 years. Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
The plethora of tobacco knowledge,
Oh,
but
gosh.
then sourcing and getting the tobacco was the biggest thing. And so just a very, very special blend. This is my second one. We had our marketing call where Rafael Nadal spoke with us, told us about the special blend. And I didn't get to smoke it. I smoked it that night in the garage, and it was absolutely amazing. I had a Toro size. Tonight we are smoking the number 2 for the podcast. It is a soft press cigar, but what they tried to do was go back to the original Monte Cristo blend in 1935, and this is that blend reimagined, utilizing Nicaraguan tobacco.
So
So
like
majestic when you say it like that. Did you get that pause? Like, reimagined. The old guy on.
Only I had Steve's voice.
I was
saying
gonna
that.
say, read it.
Reimagined.
Write it
It
down.
reminds me of like the old guy in Jurassic Park. This
Yes.
is Jurassic Park. Go ahead.
So
But-
so like the tobacco strain and the mash bill basically for the cigar is what it was in 1935,
So-
but utilizing Nicaraguan tobacco.
Yeah,
Okay.
you're correct. So we have access to all that, right? Because our parent company is a joint venture with Habanos SA.
That's right.
And so we have that recipe. Not only that, but Rafael Nadal said that he went back and set with Benji Menendez, who, if you notice, in the little imprint, it says M and G
Mhm.
on Monte Cristos. That's Menendez and Garcia,
Okay.
right? Going back to Cuba. And that's who created the Monte Cristo. I believe I have that right. But the Benji Menendez family, who was working out of, I believe it was the H. Upman factory,
Yeah.
where the Monte Cristo was out of. And, they talked to him about the original blend and the quote unquote recipe, if you will. And so I can't stress it enough how good this blend was. And the first cigar, and then the quarter way that I'm in on this second, this number 2, just an unbelievable. It plumes smoke. The flavor profiles, everybody gets kind of weird when I start talking about flavor profiles of cigars.
Mhm.
I sent out an email and I explained it, how you get some soft white pepper notes off of the foot right away when you light it, and then just a real nice like a dark cocoa, like maybe some cacao nibs, in it. Cacao nibs, yeah.
Okay.
Dark chocolate, right? The essence.
Cacao, huh?
Yeah, cacao. And some nougat. You get some of that nougat. And I had a guy respond, and he said this. He said, Josh, I'm 100% that I've never tasted a cigar that tastes like food. So thank you
Which
for
is
that.
ridiculous because we
So was he
talk
calling you
about
out?
food spices all the time with cigars.
Was he calling you out, or did he agree with you once you smoked it?
He has yet to smoke it.
Oh, so he was just busting your balls.
So I wrote him back and
He's just fucking with you.
I said, hey, so does that mean 10 boxes in each size? Is that what you want? Is that what I'm hearing? And no, but truly, so nougat. What the heck is nougat? The only thing that I can think of
Twist,
is
right? No, that's
what's
Three
inside
Musketeers.
the Three
Milky Way.
Musketeers, right? The Three Musketeers bar.
Mhm.
That
same
odd,
Fluffy, whipped.
fluffy stuff.
Yeah, the whipped nougat.
And that is seriously what I get when I'm smoking this right now, and it's accentuated by this Basil Hayden.
You need to write a blog.
Basil
Basil
Hayden.
Hayden.
Basil Hayden's.
Where's the S? I'm not sure.
Just skip it all together.
Mind you, Josh is not. None of us has been drinking yet, so
I took a
This
sip.
is just me.
all right. This is just me.
So-
You're raw.
No, when you were talking about the history and the like finding that old recipe, it kind of reminds me of like if you inherit like your grandmother's cookbook and it's got like all these handwritten inserts in it or these index cards thrown in there. It's like, yeah, they tell you to do this. Here's how I did it. It's kind of what it makes me think of.
So I have a
get kind of
question.
There's a grandma in the group.
I get kind of a woodsy spice at the beginning of it.
Mm-hmm.
I can see that.
Yeah.
No cacao though.
No, nougat?
No,
Well,
I don't get the cacao or
what
nougat
is
yet.
what is
It's-
cacao?
So you know the
Just
little
chocolate.
the little nibs that you know come on top of your acai bowl. Yeah, like I get them
No.
added to my. As a matter of fact, I just had it this morning.
You had
Why don't you just get a
Cacao
chocolate
on
bar?
there.
It's so much
on my
easier.
acai bowl. It's like bittersweet chocolate, right? But it's the true chocolate.
It's just
Okay.
dark chocolate.
Yes.
Yeah.
With no sweetness.
True
Yeah,
form.
it's not milk
No.
chocolate.
Wow.
Sweet.
So here's the
Sounds
thing.
better. All right.
If
You know
this
cacao-
cigar is dark chocolate, then we need some. I would need to find this in St. Louis because
But I definitely
this
see
might
where you get that dark chocolate note at. Definitely. It like initially it was that woody spice that I got, and then that backed off right after it got maybe quarter inch into the cigar.
Yeah.
And then now, the rest of the flavor is kind of developing.
I definitely get the spice a little bit. It's got a little bit of that like kind of spice with the cacao and
Yeah.
Three Musketeers or whatever.
Tastes
No,
like
it's
Halloween.
delicious. I actually had the opportunity to smoke this on one of my old man walks the other day, and it was very good. And it went really well with I had Jennings Java coffee, the golden espresso, and it went really
Yeah.
really well with a black coffee.
Yeah.
So I will say that
yeah.
it stands up to even a black coffee, like that spice, the like you're saying, the dark chocolate.
Is the Tinder Box going to be getting this in?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Absolutely.
That's going to be a
Has this
Saturday
laun-
morning.
this
cigar
has
for
not
me.
launched officially.
This is launched.
So it's
We are
shipped.
launching it. It's shipped. I think it should be at the Tinder Box within the next day or two if it's not already
Nice.
there.
Nice. And what's the MSRP?
Yeah, the MSRP.
It's similar to the Epics, if I'm not mistaken, like 17,
it is.
18,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
it's a bit more than your normal. I mean, it's going to be in there. It's obviously less than the Cinquenta that you guys released.
Yes. Yep.
So it's not going to be like this ridiculously priced cigar, but it definitely smokes really, really well, and I think it's appropriately priced, especially with all the things that you just talked about that went into it.
Very well and very reasonable in a 10-count box.
10-count box,
Right?
which is
if
gorgeous
you're a
as
box buyer
always.
or you want to, get that special someone, a nice Christmas gift. That really
Valentine's
means
Day.
something. Yeah, there you go. Valentine's Day, if need be. If you want to wait that long, I would not
When's
suggest
Arbor
that
Day?
you wait that long.
Well,
Boxing.
For me,
All right.
this would make a great birthday gift because my birthday is coming up. So
All right, gosh,
there's 5
Wow.
people in the
Hint.
audience. So.
that is not obvious at all. I do want to show you guys a bunch of stuff that you can't get, unless you go to the market. They always go all out on this stuff, and you guys probably can't see it. Let me see if I can actually. I'm gonna take up the screen here. Sorry, ladies, if I can.
Okay, do it. We're not important.
No, well, you're very important. I mean, come on, still on your mics, just so you know. So don't.
Don't get crazy.
This is going to be like a tumbler here that's got the Monte Cristo new logo for this cigar, the 1935 anniversary. Also, you guys teamed up with Twin Engine Coffee correct?
Out of Nicaragua, yeah. Yep.
And speaking of which, we have a little bit of talk to us about this. Is this going to be available anywhere, or is this just for the launch?
So I believe this is for the launch, and we're going to be doing some of these promo events. I would say where it's first a pairing with the retailers and getting it into their hands, and then at any launch parties that we have or anything. So this is a blend, twin engine coffee out of Nicaragua. Take the top 1% of coffee beans in Nicaragua to make their coffee. Well, Rafael Nadal got together with I believe it's Colin Ganley, who is part of the cigar industry via Cigar Journal, and they came up with this blend. So this blend was handcrafted, and even says it on the side. You guys aren't going to be able to see this, but it has the stamp of Monte Cristo on it. And it comes with it. It's very very cool.
Yes.
But yeah, so we partnered up with Twin Engine Coffee to have that launch. What else do you have there, Steve?
I got a cutter here that's got the logo on it as well. I have a wallet, which has got a money clip on it. It's awesome. I mean, I can show all this stuff. Forget what this one is. What is this?
The case, the holder.
Finger.
Oh, this is badass. So this is going to be a custom Lotus Monte Cristo case, and then we got a binder that's just gorgeous as well. I do want to throw out, I'm not sure which yet, because I am going to probably use some of this stuff myself, but we will be also raffling off to some of our patrons as well. So if you guys aren't on the patreon.com, we're going to be raffling off a couple of these things, send them out to you in January. So all right, calm down. It's going to be random, and I will post it randomly, the whole randomizer thing. But if it lands on someone local, obviously that helps.
I wish they would have sent me enough so I could have been like Oprah and like, you get one, and you get one, and you get one. You two ladies, you guys get one.
I mean, I'll send you my address, and you can just mail me the tumbler. That's all I really need.
This guy's like chucking at the audience, knocks the laptop over, and perfect. Perfect.
Yeah.
Hey, all right. Yeah, it's fantastic. So let's talk about Basil Hayden's now that we have the ladies on as well. And Dan, can you hit that light switch behind you too, so you can see us a little bit better?
I do have a quick question about the cigars.
Yes.
So what's the deal with size? Because you said that one comes in 3 different sizes. Is there or 4 different sizes? Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. So what's the deal with the size? Is it
Yeah, great question.
So concerned about the size.
This is a great
it's important.
I mean, like,
typical female.
Damn it.
So
and he's blushing now. Thank you.
It is a great question.
All sizes are good.
It's a great question,
Right?
though. No, but it truly is because they don't know.
Not true, Tanya says in the audience.
Listen. So it's all preference, but I say it's all preference.
Yeah, it is.
Interesting. Okay.
What is your size? What do you?
What?
That was rhetorical. He's
All right,
not
hang
actually.
on. Alaina, what was the actual question about size?
So let me
Everyone understands the different sizes. We don't need.
I know what you meant.
preferences.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes. So the demi size that I referred to before is a little bit a smaller ring gauge, and it would be known as almost a Corona.
That's what I was thinking.
But the blend and the makeup, it has less filler in it, and it's going to be a little bit stronger because it has less of the filler in it, and the filler is adding to the flavor, and you get more of the strength profile from the wrapper that you see along the outside. And so in the Toro and the number 2 that we're smoking, they're very similar in flavor profiles. The Churchill is just a tad bit longer. I think it's an inch longer. And
what's the ring gauge on that Churchill?
I believe 50.
Good. Okay.
I believe it's 50.
I'll be very excited for that because Monte Cristo makes some Churchills that are 54 or 56 ring gauge.
Yeah.
Like on the Espada.
I don't think so. Don't quote me on that. But again, it's soft pressed as well.
Are all 4 of them soft pressed?
All 4 of them are soft pressed. So yeah, that was a good question. Don't let Steve frazzle you on that one.
I was just trying to clarify the question.
So it could be a preference thing, like how the flavor profile is, how strong
Yes.
I guess it is. Okay.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Yep, very much so.
But then also,
Yeah.
typically when you're buying a cigar that you're going to smoke, one of the first questions you have to ask yourself is, how much time do I have?
Mhm.
So if you've only got, say, 45 minutes to an hour, you're not going to grab a Churchill,
Right.
because you don't have enough time to smoke that entire cigar unless
Right.
you're hotboxing it. So you're going to either stop smoking it and you're not going to enjoy the whole thing, or what some people might do is they might finish it the next day or whatever. So, and it's not going to taste the same. So you buy the size based on how much time you have to smoke.
I didn't know that. That's interesting. Okay. Well, learning something new today.
There you
I
go.
like
That's
it.
what we do.
Nate, tell us about the Basil Hayden.
Oh,
It's a typical size of a fifth.
750 milliliters.
For those
So-
concerned about size.
Good size, pretty good size.
yeah.
It's reasonable.
So Basil Hayden 10 year. This is coming out of Beam Suntory, distilled at one of the Jim Beam facilities. It's bottled at 80 proof, which for a 10 year, I was actually kind of surprised looking it up that it was only an 80 proof whiskey. For 10 year, I kind of expected something to be a little bit more, say 90 to 100. Not quite barrel proof or barrel strength, but
I think with the
Just-
trend, you would think that. Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
Yeah,
you think that they're going to go with that because this is. But I mean, you think about what's like Eagle Rare was. Is what?
100.
It's 100. Oh, huh.
Yeah.
Fuck me then.
It's somewhere around there. Yeah. Mash bill on this is for anyone who's familiar with some of the Jim Beam products, it's actually a similar mash bill to what they use in Old Granddad and Old Granddad 114.
Really?
Yeah, it's 63% corn, and then it's a high rye at 27% rye,
Oh yeah.
and then 10% malted barley. And MSRP in the state of Ohio, this is going to be $69.99 in the state of Ohio.
69.
So, yep.
All right. We got Jim Johnson out there. So you guys, ladies, are drinking the Basil Hayden's 10-year rye, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
So before we get into that, I did have a question from Jim Johnson on the feed here. He says Basil Hayden's 10-year rye, is it worth getting? So you guys just reviewed this, is that correct?
We had it on a virtual tasting that we did over the summer. I personally like it. I'm a huge fan of high rye bourbons. I think it's smooth. If you want something that has a super long finish, this isn't going to be the choice, but I
Okay.
think it's a very well-rounded high rye bourbon.
Yeah.
Or rye
There you
whiskey.
go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
I don't know,
Jim
Alaina.
out there.
Yeah. I mean, for the price point, I mean, I have ryes that I like better for a less expensive price point, but I definitely think it's a solid option. And I'm a big fan of Basil Hayden,
Yeah,
in general.
the 10-year rye in the state of Ohio is going to cost you $10 more. It's going to be $79.
Okay.
Which is what I paid for this in Kentucky.
Did you?
Okay.
Yeah.
You went all the way to Kentucky for that?
Well, that's right across the river from where he lives. So
I mean, he's
Oh.
he's
I went
also
all the way 30 minutes.
He's a
all the way.
regional manager and
Yeah,
he lives
so-
in Cincinnati.
yeah, he drives. Yeah, he has a
Fair.
whole territory that he drives around. So that's one of the beauties of that job is, yeah.
I was in State College 2 days ago.
There you
Got
were.
got some Eagle Rare for my buddy
That's right.
Steve
That's
here.
right.
Picked up
Nice.
some other nice picks. And
Yeah, you had another one. What was it?
well, today you don't know this.
Oh,
I woke up in Cleveland. It's kind of like wow.
You stay
I woke
like
up
a
in
bad
Cleveland.
night.
Yeah, was that planned?
Yeah.
Was
It
that
did sound
planned?
weird the way I said that.
Yeah.
I went
woke
to
up in
bed in
Cleveland.
Pittsburgh and woke up in
And
Cleveland.
so I heard that there were some E.H. Taylors that were lingering in Ohio and dropping. And so I ran from my hotel room, threw on some sweatpants, a sweatshirt, and went right down the road. And the website said that there was single barrel E.H. Taylor. And I waited 10 minutes in the blistering cold and got in there, and he just shook his head. He's like, no, we don't have any. And the guys, behind me was like, but the website said you do. And I was like, yeah, Pete, I'm out of here. I know how this goes.
But it's awesome.
Yeah, so long story short, I made a couple other calls. I drove 30 minutes north, and I got a E.H. Taylor barrel proof.
Nice.
Nice.
It was pretty
It's a
sweet.
good find.
So
Nice.
yep. I knew I was going to be one of two things. I was going to be thoroughly disappointed for driving 30 minutes because I called and she said, yeah, I have it. I said, can I pay for it over the phone? She said, no.
No.
Mm-mm.
I said, can you set aside? No, I can't do that. I said, I'm on my way.
And you're going out sweats.
Yep.
Are you still in the going out sweats?
Oh, I was still, dude. I was on the highway.
Question.
I was blasting. Took me 25 minutes.
Do these going out sweats also have pocket squares or just this outfit?
Ooh. Ooh. They were Adidas, so it's just
just standard Adidas.
Just a standard jogger.
Matching.
Jogger.
Yeah.
Were they really weird because I was in my like dress up shoes. I was in like my,
you were.
my,
Oh my
like,
God.
my white sneakers because I left all the other ones in my car, which I had, but I did not have time to switch into my Yeezys, and so I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna
Yeezys.
rock these. You know.
How
Were they-
casual. Let me just
Were
wear Yeezys to run to the liquor store.
Were they pull away Adidas pants?
If you had to go fast.
Pull away. If you want to go fast. Yeah, man. The snaps. You remember that?
Yeah. No.
I do.
You see like two people like pulling ahead of you. You're like, oh, here we go. Game time, baby.
Hey,
Fucking game time.
get out of my way. I'm going for the bourbon.
Just
So your
Johnny
pants on the
Knoxville
ground back
dance
there.
in
I'll
front
get
of
them
them.
later.
How many
Don't worry
Russian
about
stereotypes you trying to fit
Don't
in
worry
there?
about it.
All right.
Don't worry about it.
I am going to read the back of this bottle here. So it says, aged for 10 years in the foothills of Kentucky, this golden amber bourbon offers a rare take on the Basil Hayden's bourbon you love, featuring, in all caps, big oak aromas with hints of char, vanilla, and rye. The wood flavors are complemented by a perfect balance of caramel sweetness and rye spice. Bottled at a smooth 80 proof, the finish is lightly smoky with a subtle hint of char, again, a memorable final note for an exceptional spirit. So big oak. Would you guys agree? What do you guys think of this?
I think initially it does taste a little bit light, and that's probably because it's 80 proof. I get more sweetness and vanilla bean from it than necessarily the oak. I think that would have been flipped had this been bottled at a higher proof. Had this been bottled at, say, 90 to 100 proof, I think you may have gotten more of the char and the oak flavors as opposed to the sweetness.
Yeah. I get a lot of sweetness. It is lighter, but I like it. I think when we keep going back to this whole thing about price, we talk about, being bottled at a higher proof. It's almost like you want a little bit more when you're in that $70 price range or whatever. You kind of like you're looking for it. That's like the trend. This is I think, a fairly easy drinker. It's very good. Now, granted, we are smoking a very flavor bomb of a cigar too, which I didn't take a sip of this before I lit up the cigar, so that could also impact it. On a fresh palate, I'd be interested to see how this drinks. But I agree with you. I think it's very sweet. It's good. I mean, I think this is a good bourbon.
It is very good. I like it more than the regular Basil Hayden, the non-age stated.
Yeah, I think that's got a little harshness, little bite to it, in my opinion.
Yeah, but it is about twice the price.
What does that come in proof wise? Do you know right off the top of your head?
I think they're around 80 as well.
Regular basil.
I think it's around 80.
Regular basil is 80.
80.
Mhm.
Okay.
I mean, I think Basil Hayden's been doing a lot of stuff with like the different ryes and the different releases.
Yeah,
with
the
some of
Caribbean.
the Caribbean, and then the port, right?
Yep.
So, and I've never had the rye that you ladies are drinking, but I mean, this is something that, and we'll get to that when we review it, at the end, the rating or anything like that. But I think, the price tag for what we're drinking, it's very good, but it is kind of in a league of a very good. I keep, we've talked about Eagle Rare a couple times. It's like this type of a flavor and everything. I feel like should be. What's that? Bullet 10. Yeah, but I'm just saying the way that this is real easy drinking. Bullet 10 is I think bolder.
Yeah.
I think this is going to be something that's going to be a little bit like I would love drinking this. Like, but it's not necessarily a nightcap. This is more like a casual drinker, in my opinion, and it's very flavorful. I think.
Yeah,
What do you think, Josh?
I agree. And I'll talk more when we go into the ratings of it. I think that the sweetness enhances the cigar.
Yeah.
I think that enhances the pairing, but I feel like I don't know. lackluster is a little bit of it.
Ooh.
But at the same time that I say that, it is very smooth drinking.
Yeah.
And I think it's very easy, to sip. It doesn't leave you with that burn, which really enhances this cigar. So
yeah, there's no burn down the no Kentucky hug or anything like that. All the flavor and everything's in the palate, in the mouth.
Yeah.
I think Tanya in the garage had a question.
I do. How does it compare?
Get closer.
How does it compare to the Caribbean cask? And what the fuck is a Kentucky hug?
That's a good question, actually.
Kentucky hug is that where when you swallow it, you feel that kind of burn in the top of your chest. Yeah,
When Jake was on the podcast, he talked about that every week.
And the bourbon gives you a nice tight squeeze.
That's right.
When you're in the foothills of Kentucky, there's a large man
with a deep
you heard of
voice.
A bear hug? Yeah, no, this is a Kentucky hug.
No, comparing it to the Caribbean Reserve, which has Caribbean rum in it, so this is not going to have as much sweetness as that because of the rum and the sugar cane. I also think it's lighter in terms of the viscosity and the body. Like the Caribbean Reserve rye, just when it's in the glass and it hits your palate, it just tastes and feels thicker in your palate. Where compared to this is just very light in your mouth, kind of fluffy.
It's so Todd Conley, who's a listener out, he says, personally, I think it's priced a bit high for what the product is. Don't get me wrong, I do enjoy Basil products. So far, like Tanya, you in the audience, you brought up the Caribbean.
Yep.
Like I said, some of the projects that Basil has done, I feel have been unique. I think they're very good. They're not necessarily go-tos every time, but they're nice to try. The regular Basil Haydens, I'm never really disappointed with, especially at the price point. I think it's good. This one, it's funny when we talk about price. It's something that, again, the trend is barrel proof. The trend is stronger stuff. Like you go up in price, you go up in age, you're almost expecting a bit more of a punch. Maybe this is something that if this succeeds, you'll see some other distilleries coming out with some of the higher products, if you will, not be as higher proofed. Maybe you'll see a trend come back. We saw it in the cigar world, in my opinion. At times, you'll see companies just going full-blown, Ligero, nicotine drips, which is, just a powerful cigar. Everyone's coming out with these big ones. Then the next year or 2 years, you see more lighter or, Connecticut shade type stuff on the mild to medium side. And then you see another year where you're doing a lot of like just medium body, and it's all about the flavor.
Well, like this year, Altadis released the Romeo and Julieta Connecticut Nicaragua and the Reserve Real Nicaragua,
right?
Which I think are more that mild medium to medium.
Well, I think some of the more successful ones, if you go off the list of like Cigar Aficionado, like, the reigning champ is the aging room Nicaragua. Mm-hmm. Not a powerhouse, not a mild cigar. It's all about the flavor in that one.
Yeah.
So, you might see, and it'd be interesting to go back and listen to what we're saying right now about this bottle a year from now and see if there's other distilleries that are coming out with some of these age statement bottles that have more age on it, and they're really just going for flavor. They're done with the whole, like, you can have your barrel proofs and everything, but everyone's got those.
Mm-hmm.
So now we got to go back to what's the flavor, pour it in a glass and sip on it neat without having to cut it with water if you want to, or throw a cube in it or whatever it might be and proof it down for your own personal liking, which we've talked about on the podcast before. A lot of people like to do that. They want to start at like, 120, 115, and then like, I'll just add a little bit and get it to my liking. This is coming straight out of the kitchen, and the chef's like, no, don't put any pepper on it. Don't do anything to it. Like, this is the dish. This is how it comes. Don't insult.
There's no need for A1. Just
A1.
Don't order your steak well done. So I think when it comes to the price point conversation around these 10-year Basil Haydens, are more significant when it comes to cost, but they're annual releases, right? So it comes out once a year, and there's probably going to be a more limited quantity, so that drives up the price per bottle.
absolutely
True.
Right.
Smaller yields of it.
Whereas the normal Basil Hayden is just, it's produced no matter what, so it's there.
Right.
Yeah, the rye is also, I mean, I don't know about the allocation where you guys are at, but you couldn't really find it here very well. So I don't think the allocation's really good in St. Louis, so they probably make a lesser.
Well, just Missouri sucks in general. So
yeah. Our allocation with certain products is not great.
Does not exist.
Really? It's not a good market for that?
It's so I think we've talked about this in the past or touched on it. Ohio is like state controlled allocation,
Right.
whereas Missouri is not. So it's sort of the distillery decides how many bottles the state of Missouri gets, and then the distributor decides who gets what. So it's fair and unfair in the sense like the market controls it, but it's also kind of makes it harder to like know where to find things.
Gotcha.
How about price point?
I think they're pretty much in line with what you guys are talking about. It's maybe $5 to $10 difference, but it varies
depends on where you buy it from and versus like a total versus a more boutique
or a mom and dad place.
You know, just the sip I just had too. I don't think we talked about it. I got a little bit of like a butterscotch. Honestly.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That would make sense because like I said earlier, it's the same mash bill as the Old Granddad 114, and I get the same note from the Old Granddad.
Yeah, but excuse me, the 114 though, definitely. I know it's a higher proof or whatever, but again, what is it, $30 here or something like that?
Yeah,
a lot harsher than this.
It's got some heat to it. Absolutely. I was drinking some of that last night.
Yeah, it's got heat, but I mean, I like that bottle, but I mean, this is again, I keep going back to it. I know everyone's talking about the price. Everyone's talking. It's very, very pleasant. This is it's a nice flavor.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm comparing this when you go to the cigar world. This is definitely getting back to that. We're just kind of medium strength. We're using more Seiko or something like get more flavor and really trying to allow you to enjoy the drink as opposed to overanalyzing it, even though that's exactly what
like
we're
a
doing
BS
right
Gold.
We are. Alaina and I talk about this a lot because we get a lot of questions from our listeners and our participants in our tastings and stuff. They're like, where would you start with bourbon? What is approachable? So Basil Hayden's as a brand with the 80 proof statement and all of that, it's a very approachable drink. So if you're new or you're starting or you want to dabble in like the cigar versus bourbon world, Basil Hayden's is a great brand to start with because it's so approachable. It's smooth. You get the flavors. It's very enjoyable. Whereas like you're saying 114, it's harsh.
Yeah. Yeah. And 114. Oh, go ahead, Alaina.
Oh, no, I was going to say, you guys were talking about Old Granddad. So Basil Hayden's was named after Meredith Basil Hayden's, whose grandson made Old Granddad and named Old Granddad after Basil Hayden's. So little fun fact for you.
Yeah,
Wow.
What is it called? Incestuous family down there in Kentucky. Everybody knows each other.
I don't think you
names each
know
other.
what that word means.
I don't think that word means what you think
It doesn't mean everyone knows each other. I know that, but it's like,
I feel like you just
Is that Arkansas or is that Kentucky?
like you marry your cousins or whatever. That's what it feels like every time we talk about families in bourbon. They're all related.
Well, again, Bourbon and Blondes. Check them out. They're going to give you a lot of history on some of the families out there.
So hey,
I just say stuff I want. Okay.
quick question. Price point wise, where does this come in versus other 10 years?
Well, that's a good question.
Well, so like for
It's high. It's high.
So,
I think.
I mean, one thing that comes right to mind that has gotten ever so popular in the last 2 years is Henry McKenna, right?
Yeah.
That's got a 10-year.
That does have a 10-year age statement. Yeah.
Age stamp.
that's
on
also
it.
bottled and bond.
Yeah.
So that's a 10-year 100 proof, and that in the state of Ohio is going to be 50.
That's gonna be 50.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, that just went up though. I mean, a year ago it wasn't 50.
No, before that it was $30
It was
bottle.
30 or
Well,
so.
because
And
it
then it won
got
some
some
awards.
accolades,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Accolades.
Eagle Rare is a 10-year, and that's going to be at 32.
Not officially anymore.
Yeah, they took away the age stamp on that. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I think they're blending that one now.
Yeah.
But
yeah, so Dustin brought up the Bullet 10, and that comes in at 50, 40 to 50. So I think it's a little high. I think, again, Abby, you were talking about this is something that's a limited. Is that what you were saying?
It's released once a year, so it's not going to be readily available. So I think the bourbon is released in the fall and the 10-year rye is released in May, so springtime. So typically when you have an annual release, it's going to be a limited quantity. It's only out once a year, so the availability is not there.
And it says that on the front. It says that on the front, crafted using high rye bourbon recipe that makes Basil Hayden's bourbon so unique. This special release is aged 10 years. So I mean, yeah. So you are going to add some price to that, obviously. I mean, cigars are the same way, right,
Yeah.
Josh?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Like this cigar.
Yeah, right. When you, because think about that, right? To get to that 10-year, right? To have tobacco sit in a quote unquote vault, right? And you're caring for it and keeping it at the proper conditions. I mean, that there's a cost associated with
There
that,
is.
right? And you're going to have to pass that along to the consumer. So,
Just business, you know.
And there's not a lot of aged ryes. It's not super common. So that could be also why the price point lands where, it is for Basil Hayden's for their rye. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
That makes me think of the Mastersons, which is a 10-year rye.
Yeah.
And that comes in Ohio at 75.
Whistle Pig is
Whistle Pig. Yeah.
Whistle
Those
Pig's a
10-year.
different beast, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
Whistle Pig's a different beast.
Yeah.
I think it's also so it's coming out of Beam, right? So you look at that stuff. Someone, I think it was Jim Johnson, was drinking Booker's tonight. You have that. Not everyone knows that Basil Hayden's is a Beam product. So when you're pricing that too, it's just, again, I keep going back to the cigars because that's a little bit more my wheelhouse as far as pricing goes. But when you release some of these bottles, you can't do a 10-year that necessarily is the like $5 more than your regular product.
Oh, absolutely.
So I mean, there is, I think, a little bit of you have your own. We're talking about what other 10-year bottles are out there and all that stuff. But when you compare it to, all right, I got a 10-year here that's going to be a limited release or once-a-year release, and then I also have my regular one that's coming in the 40s, right? So I'm not going to put our once-a-year release out at $50.
Right.
So it's almost there. I think there's a little bit of drive there, maybe from a marketing standpoint, along with what Josh was saying, as far as, you have that whole, it costs more to hold on to a product, you lose products, stuff like that, when it comes to that. But I think there is something there where you're like, I'm not just going to put it out at the same price as my other one.
Yeah.
Especially Basil Hayden's, I think has established themselves as a very reputable brand as far as that goes under the Beam label.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and I think with it being a 1 year, once a year release with this price point, I think that's even at $70, even if you don't think that this is worth $70, people are going to buy it because of its rarity, its availability, its age. All those are going to factor into it.
Right.
And people are still going to buy it up because $70 is not outrageous.
Right. Yeah. People in the bourbon world too, I from our experience, they are name brand driven. So people will go out and even if they don't know if it tastes good, they'll go out and make an extra trip and go out of their way just to buy it. And you're right, like $70, I mean, in my opinion too, is like not completely outrageous. So, if it feels exclusive, it's a price point from a marketing standpoint. It's a price point that feels good for probably their consumers. So,
yeah,
no, I agree. And again, I think it's a good bottle. I really do. I mean, I feel like so. On top of that, Alaina, you also have the people that are going to buy it because it is hard to find. Todd Connolly on the feed, he says, I've seen this only once in Ohio. So, I mean, there are plenty of people out there that, and then you throw in the secondary market. I don't know if this is bringing anything from the secondary market yet or anything like that. But I mean, you might see people that, you buy it for 70 and you're like, yeah, I'll sell it to you for 100.
Yeah.
You know what I mean, so you have the flippers that are going to do that as well. So, I mean, it's not going to stay on a shelf very long, in my opinion.
No,
You're right. $70 is not, I mean, it's not extraordinary in the whiskey world these days. Yeah. If you hit 100, if they threw $100 on this, it's like, go fuck yourself. But
there it is.
Yeah, but that $30, let me tell you what, that's make or break it.
What's Booker's annual release? What did they do a couple years ago? Was it an anniversary or something they did a couple years ago? And it was almost experimental. I think they put like a $90 price point on it, or even $100, just to kind of see if the market would.
Is it the little book
would have it?
No, 30th. Dustin says 30th. Wasn't that long ago.
Yeah, they did something, and shortly after that, you saw the price of Booker's go
increase.
Yeah.
Yeah, Booker's is pulling, at least in Ohio, over 80, Dustin says. So, I mean, yeah, these are all Beam products. I mean, there's cost that goes into, like we talked about. So, I mean, it just makes sense, unfortunately. And on top of that, I mean, the market, we've talked about, if you have a celebrity behind a bottle, right, and you have this unknown, you don't even know what distillery it's coming from unless you really look into it, and they're coming in at $50 right off the rip, just because they have so many costs involved by paying all these different people, and just because like 50, I think $50 for a smaller, even like a local distillery or whatever, because the cost is involved. So, places like Beam, if other companies are putting out bottles that don't have anywhere near 10 years on it, and they're coming out with like this, oh yeah, well, the first batch, it's like, it's 3 to 4 years, and they're coming in with a price point of $45, $50. Why wouldn't you come out with a $70 price point? I think that's driven by just the everyday that doesn't have anywhere close to the 10 years that, Josh, that was a good point when you're comparing it to other 10-year bottles. But I think when you compare it to the rest of the market, Beam's doing pretty well as far as the business savvy.
They're doing all right.
No joke.
They're not hurting. I mean, the demand is there, right? So if you price it competitively, even if it feels expensive, it's $70, $75 a bottle,
Exactly.
People are going to buy it. And I mean, I would.
There you go. Yeah. Before we get to some of the ratings here for part one, what are you two actually really enjoying right now for the listeners? Again, Bourbon and Blondes, if you guys want to check them out, they do a lot of things on social media. They do these virtual tastings, which I have yet to participate in.
Well, they're local. Sorry.
We're working on making them national, so we're working on it.
But UPS, they have rules, so we're working on it.
That's fair. But you're doing all this stuff, and then on top of that, the podcast. You guys do the podcast how often?
Well, this year it's been when I get my shit together and I publish one, but usually monthly, bi-weekly.
Okay, that's what I thought. It was every couple of weeks.
Yeah.
But I mean, you guys have been doing it now for how long?
2 years, year and a half.
Oh, yeah, year and a half. Yeah.
Year and a half. So yeah, Bourbon and Blondes, check them out for sure. But I mean, what have you been enjoying lately during this wonderful, uneventful 2020?
Yeah.
Right now I'm crushing really hard on the Yellowstone 2020 limited release.
Okay.
Yeah.
I got a bottle of that and I can't get enough. It's almost gone. I'm obsessed.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, right now I'm drinking Old Elk. But I also Minor Case, which is a Yellowstone product as well.
Okay. What Old Elk did we just do not too long ago?
It was a pick. It was a store pick out of Illinois, I believe.
Oh, nice.
That was a weeded pick. That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, so they do weeded bourbon.
Yeah. That was nice.
It was.
That was very nice. Very nice.
Yeah, we just released an episode. So for anyone who wants to get a download on Old Elk,
we'll spend some time with Kate Douglas, who's their head distiller. She's working with Greg Metz, who's their master distiller.
That's
They're
awesome.
coming up with some fun stuff. Yeah,
they're
good
awesome.
brands.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, check them out. iTunes, all the regular stuff, right? iTunes, Spotify, all that good stuff.
And just look for Bourbon and Blondes, and if it's related, you'll find us.
Okay, fair enough.
I don't know.
Depending on how deep you dig there, but you'll find us.
There you go. Don't go to the dark web. Just Google. Just Google. Or dark web, whatever you're into, man.
If you do, let me know, depending on what you're getting. So
yeah. You're the one that brought up OnlyFans earlier.
That's where she's going with this. So make it stop and keep talking.
Yeah. I'm not going to OnlyFans with this. Anyway.
All right. Anyways, getting back on track here a little
there
bit.
There we go.
The rating here, and sorry, I know you guys aren't smoking and drinking the same thing, but just real quick, out of 10. So we did have the question earlier, 10 being the best. If you guys were to rate the Basil Hayden's 10-year rye, what would you guys give it and why?
I would. I'm thinking like a 6.57. I gravitate towards ryes that are. I just said Minor Case earlier. I love a good like sherry cask finish on a rye. But it's a good rye. I'd say 6.57 just for, we were talking earlier about the price point, and but I mean, it's drinkable, it's good. It's something that if you're a person that likes something on your bar that maybe other people don't have on your bar that you can share with friends, or and not just keep it closed on your bar, but share with friends. It's something that other people may, not have the opportunity to try.
I got you.
Mhm.
Abby?
I would go with like a 7.2.
Very specific. Wait, was that a 6.527 or a 6.57?
Yeah, Alaina gave a
Oh,
window.
it was a window. It was a window.
You got to commit. Like if you're giving numbers, you got to commit. Pick one. 7.2.
7.2. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's just
Price
it.
is a deterrent for me.
Okay.
I think it's a great rye. It's very approachable. It's easy to drink, and I love that about it. But like we've been talking about, there's other ryes out there with a better price point that I personally enjoy more.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah.
It's a good point. I mean, it really is. I mean, anymore, again, the market is flooded, obviously, with a lot of options. Especially, I think there's more and more ryes coming out as well. I'm seeing more, at least in Ohio. So again, I mean, you're flooding that market. So now it becomes a price game once you try it.
Yeah. And it's flavor too. Like there are lower price points with more flavor. And if I'm being perfectly honest, I'm a big fan of higher proofs.
Yeah.
This Basil Hayden's is approachable because it's a lower proof and you get a lot more flavors, but I want the higher proof out of it. So I'm going to go for a higher proof rye.
Why is that? Because you're right on point with, like we were talking about earlier, the trend is obviously the just even higher proof. I mean, you got to at least be at like 90 or 100 proof, because that's the trend. But why is that for you?
I like the heat and I like the spice.
Okay.
And the finishes tend to be longer on higher proof. It's not always true, but they tend to be. And that's the more and more I drink bourbon neat, that's kind of what I strive for. That's the goal.
Yeah. And I would say for me too,
Thank you, Abby.
Thank you. So I would say for me, I like a higher proof too, for what Abby was saying, but also I like something on my bar that I can put in a cocktail and also just drink neat. So it's more versatile, just because I like a more alcohol forward cocktail as well.
Well, yeah, and you don't want the proof to get too watered down. Otherwise, you lose the flavor of the whiskey in a cocktail. So
right.
That's fair. That's very fair. How about you, gentlemen? So again, we do the whiskey, the cigar, and then the pairing. So out of 10 being the best.
Josh, you're the guest. You're the guest of honor.
You start us off. It always goes.
So the guest of honor says you have to start.
Okay.
Left to right.
For the whiskey, I'm gonna give it a 7.5.
Okay.
It is light. It is smooth. It's very enjoyable. The price point, I'd be a little hesitant to pick it up. There's some like the Basil Hayden Reserve, Caribbean Reserve rye, or the port one, like lower price point. I like the flavor of those. I might gravitate more towards those. But this is definitely a very enjoyable bottle. There's nothing wrong with it at all in terms of the flavor profile. A little sweeter than what I was expecting for it being a 10-year, but I attribute that more to it being an 80 proof. But it being 80 proof makes it very easy to drink.
Okay.
For the cigar, this cigar, I'm going to be at least a 9 to 9.5.
Wow.
Wait, I need to get one.
Yeah.
It's just the cow.
It's the whipped nougat. No.
You said whip.
Well, he said Three Musketeers. No, it's a very, very enjoyable cigar. In terms of the strength of the cigar, I'm putting this up there like that medium to full. So kind of like when I think of Monte Cristo, medium to full body, I kind of think the Espada Oscuro, but I like the complexity of this cigar a little bit more. And I absolutely love the flavor of it. Love the retrohale. One thing I also really enjoy about it is just giant plumes of thick white smoke from it. And it just
the draw of the construction is fantastic.
It's absolutely top notch. So so depending on the size, $17 and $20. It's an absolutely fantastic cigar and worth the price. As a pairing, I'm probably going to be about an 8 maybe on the pairing.
Okay.
Surprisingly, I think as light as the Basil Hayden's is, it actually does hold up to the cigar.
I'm telling you, it's flavorful.
And with the woodiness and spice from the cigar, I think that flavor balances out the whiskey, because the whiskey doesn't have that spice or woodiness to it.
Yeah.
But the whiskey has the sweetness to it that helps with the cigar, because you don't get necessarily a whole lot of sweetness out of the cigar. So I think they complement each other. They're not contradicting each other.
Right.
Yeah. Wow.
Josh.
Man, I all of these
should've
specific
gone first.
ratings, I like, I'm telling you, it's
Take it out to the thousands if you have to.
it's aggressive, and I tend to go higher.
Wait, what's aggressive?
I'm just going with the what was it, 6.57?
Yeah. Well, she gave a range.
2.9.
I thought she was going.
I should have gave it an average, I guess.
I tend to go higher on my ratings. Like historically, if you go back and watch the episodes that I participated in, I go higher.
Pi squared.
The
I have high standards, so I keep my ratings.
That's
you know.
good. You need to. You need to.
I'm just kidding.
That's
No.
great. The bourbon. Initially, I was thinking like an 8.5. I'll take that to an 8. Listen, because of the price point, right? I think that
Sure.
Abby said, and I agree with, that's a deterrent for me. But as easy drinking as it is, I find, I'll just leave it at that. So, so I got an 8 on that. The cigar, and I always say, listen, that there's of course a bias because it's coming, but I mean, this is truly, I've had 2 of these now, so I at least want to get one more. But I mean, I'm giving this a 9.75888.
Okay.
That's interesting.
9.758. Is that a fraction?
Can't you just round
it up? Yeah.
I could round and I could say 10, but then everybody's gonna go, listen.
You're
so
biased.
like really, this cigar has everything that I like. I mean, Nate mentioned a lot, just the easiness, the construction, the consistency in only having 2. The 2 different sizes that I've had have been really consistent. It plumes that smoke. It hits all of the flavor notes that I like personally. So personally, that's what I'm going with. The pairing, I think it was a great pairing. I'll give it a 9 together, because the sweetness that we've been talking about, I think accentuates the flavor, and it would be interesting to go with a little bit higher proof to see if that masks the cigar and the flavors, that I get with it. So I think it was a good pairing. It's not that I was nervous bringing it, but I had heard from a couple of sources that, hey, this gets kicked around the bourbon blogs, and it doesn't have a great rating, but I give it a 9 on the rating.
Okay. So again, give me one more time with this, because this is a brand new release. The Monte Cristo 1935 anniversary. What is the blend breakdown again?
Nicaraguan.
Just all Nicaraguan.
That's all they're gonna give you.
Very specific.
Yep.
Is it made by AJ?
Yeah. It's made by AJ. It comes out of the San Latano factory.
Sure.
So not his factory in Esteli. And you have to be very vague now. I feel like in the blends. I know a lot of guys that subscribe to the blogs and are true aficionados. They're left to one team more. But with the way that things are going in our industry and the
With the
regulation
FDA
and stuff
yeah.
like that,
It'd be nice to know what
it's
seed the
Nicaraguan.
wrapper is, stuff like that, especially.
Estate tobacco is being used from AJ. So
even more vague.
Yeah. Leave you
Let me specify on the vagueness
more.
here.
Is all the tobacco coming from AJ's farms, or is he getting it from, like, say,
Estate
Placencia
tobacco.
Okay.
He's here so he doesn't get fined. All right,
Right.
just calm down.
All
So the whiskey, I would say, it is the price point is getting everyone, and I think I'm right there with you. I think so. This bottle in itself, I would absolutely give a 9 if it was $50.
Yeah.
You know, if it's coming in, because I really, and I've said it a lot already, I really enjoy the flavor profile of this bottle, and I'm getting back to that point. Much like the cigar world, I'm about the flavor. I don't care about it saying barrel proof. I appreciate, what you guys were saying about sometimes you get more of a finish off of it. This is something that I would love to have if I was going out just for a steak dinner, before the meal. You get to the bar, you meet up with the couples you're with, the group you're with, whatever it is. You're getting there and you're looking at it and you're like, you know what, I'm going to get a pour of something, because that's where you're not going to get, completely blindsided. Instead of paying $12 for a pour, I'm paying 15 or 16.
Right.
So you know what? Yeah, give me the Basil Hayden's, 10-year bourbon, because it's very enjoyable. It's going to be a great thing to kind of lead into the night. It's not the nightcap necessarily. That's where you get with some of the barrel proof stuff, or a little bit, even like 100 proof or something like that.
It'd be like starting your day with a milder cigar, like say a Monte Cristo White or Classic.
Yeah, but I mean, this bottle, I don't think anyone, unless you're looking for the higher proof or you don't like the deterrent of the price, this is just a very flavorful classic bourbon that it's very well balanced. So for me, rating it, I'm in that 8.5, all things considered.
Yeah.
Especially if, price is no object. You don't really care about the price of a bottle and you want just something flavorful that you're going to enjoy every time. I think this is the bottle for you. This is something that I think that is, again, you can give a newer whiskey drinker. You can give a more experienced whiskey drinker that wants to really kind of pull out the notes. And this is where you're at. This is a very kind of, when I say middle of the road, it's not because it's not really an excellent or exceptional bottle or a very, poor. This is something that I think anyone can enjoy if you're looking at the flavor profile. Don't talk about proof. Don't talk about price. Don't talk about anything. It's just like, just drink it, you know? And I assume you most likely will enjoy all the classic bourbon, the oak, the vanilla, the butterscotch, the sweetness and everything like that. If that's your cup of tea, this is a bottle for you. So 8.5 on that. The cigar, I'm surprised that it is all Nicaraguan. Just because, I mean, you got AJ, you got Rafael, you got your whole Grupo de Maestros with Monte Cristo. This is a very good cigar. I was not expecting it when you said it's all Nicaraguan. I expect it when you say it's AJ and it's being made by AJ, because I feel like that is a trend right now, especially with Altadis. You guys are collaborating. I mean, we have that sampler here that we were talking about, that AJ is absolutely killing it for everyone. But you guys, I mean, Altadis is really not leaning on, but just leaning into. Utilizing, just really kind of capitalizing on what he's capable of. Yeah. When you say, you get these other minds and blenders in there, and you say, all right, let's make something special. Something that, we can actually put as a 85th anniversary, commemorating this history of this brand. And I'd give this cigar a 9 if you're into that kind of medium plus, medium full. Definitely full flavored. We talked about the spice. We talked about all that stuff. It's not your typical Monte Cristo, but I don't think anything you guys are putting out anymore is really traditional when it comes to the brand name of the label of whichever of the brands in your portfolio that you're putting out, Josh. I think this is something that you're coming up with blends, and you're like, how can this complement Monte Cristo, Romeo Julieta, H. Upmann, just countless others that you guys have, these historic brands. So a 9 on the cigar. I think that it's just really, really enjoyable, and it's a unique flavor profile, which is nice. Yeah. I think that's something that when you come out with, like we're talking about, like a 10-year here, limited release or once-a-year release, you're coming out with, is this going to be a regular mainstay, like a limited production but regular production? Did you say that?
I believe limited.
Okay.
At this point.
Yeah, so I think this is something to check out. Beautifully packaged. Again, the construction is top notch. So they're definitely using some of the best rollers in the San Lotano factory. I mean, this is not something that they're just, Hey, you started last week. I need you to roll some cigars.
Yeah, people that make
And
the
if they
tobaccos
did, that
bias.
person's going to get promoted very quickly. But a whole lot, because it's flawless. I've smoked 2 of them now, and both of them have been absolutely flawless.
How did it pair with that black coffee?
Like I said, it went really well with black coffee. And again, I think, getting into the pairing side of it, the cigar doesn't overpower whatever you're drinking so far with the black coffee. This is a lighter, as we talked about, as far as the profile of the whiskey. I think this is something that the cigar, it stands up without killing whatever you're drinking.
Yeah.
And that's where I'll get into the pairing with this, is that the Basil Hayden being like what Nate was saying too, as far as it doesn't overpower. You can taste both of them. So I will say the pairing is not necessarily going to be something that you seek out, that it's going to just really complement and bring things out of. But in all fairness, what I didn't sip on the whiskey prior to lighting up the cigar, so I can't really do a fresh, palate review of that and how they pair and how they alter anything or complement. But I will say, I'd say the pairing is an 8. I think it's a good pairing. Like you can taste both, but at the same time, you're not really gonna probably seek it out. You light the cigar up again, you're gonna reach for a different bottle. I think it would go well with a rye. I haven't had the Basil Hayden 10 rye, but I think it would go with one of more your, in my opinion, traditional that warm spice rye that that I really like E.H. Taylor. Straight rye is always a favorite. I talk about that a lot. A Willet 3 or 4 year rye. Some of those are going to be that kind of like that I always talk about, like the ginger snap, like cookie, like the warm baking spices and the holiday feeling, like this time of year. I'm gonna have to crack one of those Willet 3 years here in a couple weeks here, a week or so. But yeah, so I'd say 8. I think it's a good pairing. I think they both are very, very good products, and I mean, we definitely need to get you guys some of these 1935s.
Do you think?
Yeah.
Do you think?
I won't say no.
Do you think this cigar, not overpowering the whiskey, still being able to taste the whiskey and vice versa, do you think it's more a testament to the whiskey or a testament to the cigar that it's not, that neither overpowers each other and you can taste both?
Josh, what do you think?
Yeah, that's a question right there.
You're not wrong.
You can stall.
Yeah.
I can answer if you'd like.
No. I mean, I think it's both.
Yeah.
I really do. I think that the flavors really accentuate each other, and as lame as that might sound, like, I mean, just the blend and the flavors that you get out of the cigar, and then what I brought up before, the sweetness that I get right off of it. And then at the finish, it's more of a butterscotch. But I think Abby said it before, this bourbon doesn't linger, right? And so it leaves you, with a fresh palate almost.
Yeah,
it's
clean finish.
And very, very clean finish. So I would say both.
All right. And Freddie Bird out there says, you're absolutely right, Freddie. That's partly on me. He says, anyway, you guys could let the viewers know what cigar and whiskey you guys are having before the podcast so that we can enjoy them and rate them with you guys.
We used to do that.
I think, going forward into 2021, that might be a goal. It's tough, obviously, when we have, the pleasure of having, Josh bring something brand new that's not even on the market. So that wouldn't work. But when we're doing like kind of your more everyday, more readily available cigars and whiskey, absolutely. I think that'd be perfect.
Yeah.
And I think as far as, your question, Nate, I agree with Josh. I think it's a testament to both of them. I think these are both, again, it's about the flavor.
Yeah.
Much like the cigar, it is a little bit, I think it's a little fuller bodied. I mean, it's got a lot of that. I mean, it's not a huge nicotine rush or anything like, drip or anything like that, but both are, I think, crafted to be about flavor as opposed to the proof or opposed, the strength of the cigar. It's just purely about, let's get that flavor profile out there and let people enjoy the creation of what we did here.
As light as the whiskey is, I'm pleasantly surprised that it holds up so well to this cigar.
Yeah. Again, I think it's about that flavor.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
So
not about proof.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
No.
In terms, okay. Well, I'm going to ask it anyway.
That was one.
Figured you might.
I didn't ask for a specific number of questions. I just asked. Well, actually,
Right.
maybe I did. I don't know. In terms of cigars, is it seen as like dry or oil? Like, is there, so with whiskeys and bourbons, you have a mouthfeel, right? So you've got something that has dry, you have something that's oily, you have something that's creamy, you have something that's chewy, things like that. Would you say that this cigar falls into like a certain type of mouthfeel? Because if you do, obviously the Basil Hayden 10-year bourbon complements it, but if there is a certain type of mouthfeel behind the cigar, there may be other types of bourbons and whiskeys that would also complement it.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, that's an absolutely great point. If I take that question right off the bat, yes, the answer to your initial question, depending on the makeup of the cigar, there are different ones that will essentially dry your palate out, right? And from different wrappers, you get those different notes, right? From a Connecticut wrapper or a Connecticut seed wrapper, I should say. Typically, you're getting more of a mild, a creaminess, a little bit more of a woodiness, and then you're getting more of exactly what you said, oily. There are oily wrappers that literally will stain the cellophane the more that they age in there.
Okay.
And from the oils of those tobaccos, and those are going to be typically darker Maduro wrapped cigars. Some of the Oscuros, which are the darkest wrappers, are going to be more oily, and that gives it a different mouth feel. This one is kind of right in the middle of that mouthfeel. I mean, the nougat that we talked about gives it some of that almost creaminess. The dry dark cocoa that I pick up, that white pepper right off the tip of it when you light it, I think dries it out just a little bit.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree.
But then when you get into the cigar, I think it becomes a little bit more creamy. So.
Yeah, I think it's got a little bit of a sharper finish. I noticed that. I thought it might have been the coffee I was drinking. Was it 3 days ago, something like that, when I was smoking it in the morning. I thought it was just the coffee, the black coffee, that had a little bit of natural bitterness. You know what I mean? Maybe that's the cacao.
Yeah.
Still can't say that with a straight face.
But no one can. No one can.
Yeah. But I think it's got a little bit of a sharper finish, so it's not a dry bitterness like some cigars may have. But I think I agree, Josh. It's a little bit in the middle, but it's almost leaning towards not tongue bite, but it's got that spice and sharp finish that it kind of I want to take another puff. Yeah, which is a good. I think that's a good thing.
Yeah,
I think it's got a lot of flavor there again. So
yeah, Nate, what do you think?
I put the cigar a little bit more towards the drier side of it. Like you brought up the Connecticut, like the Monte Cristo White series with that Ecuadorian Connecticut. Just I tell people, like, the smoke has a creamy texture to it.
Yeah,
like it just completely coats your palate in this kind of fluffy cloud of flavor and smoke. This one, a little bit more wood notes to it, so it's a little bit drier.
Yeah.
On the palate. So
that's what I'm referring to when I say like a sharper finish.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. At this point, end up with part 1 here. So if you guys are listening to the audio, definitely check out part 2. We are going to be tackling a topic, active listening. So that I've got a little bit. I sent these 2. I didn't send it to you guys because I wanted you guys to be a little bit more raw, and I know you guys have notes.
Interesting. So you wanted us to be unprepared.
Yes. Yeah.
Great.
Absolutely.
Cool.
More natural.
Organic is what I like to think of.
Yeah, organic.
We are not a plant, but thank you.
No, never mind. So thank you, Tinder Box at Easton, kind of the hub of where this all started. So again, Josh from Altadis USA. Tinder Box will be carrying this cigar here shortly, along with the sampler that we're going to be getting into. I mentioned earlier in the podcast, which is one of many samplers you guys have and gift sets that you guys have from Altadis, different brands. Some of them gift sets with things like Moscow Mule mugs, flasks. You've got the Yetis as well. So definitely thank you, Altadis, for the support. hopefully we can continue the relationship going into 2021. I'm looking forward to that. And then also BS Cigar Company, the gold and silver are available. So check that out, BS Cigar Company. And you can also get those through the Tinder Box or contact us through the podcast, and we will point you in the right direction. And then, no offense, but most importantly, you guys listening, patreon.com/Bourbon and BS podcast. More swag coming in 2021. Finally getting behind that, which is fantastic. We do have some t-shirts. And Ian, if you're still listening, we are getting a 3X in the next order. So don't worry. We're going to get plenty of those for you, and possibly in different colors. There was a blue one that got some attention as well. The green one for, I say, March and Patty's Day. I think it's going to be great. I think it's going to be fantastic. And then also, I know Josh has been talking about getting some little trinkets for some of the patrons as well. So that's a good way to do it. And also,
on
please
that this week.
Share, enjoy, listen, tell people about the podcast, and also Bourbon and Blondes. Follow them on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. No,
Twitter. That's no Twitter. Just
don't even
Facebook and Instagram.
I'm tired of Twitter after 2020.
I'm over it. I was over it in 2010, but here we
you
are.
guys have TikTok or anything, or no?
We have a TikTok, but
Do you?
it's not necessarily an active TikTok.
Fair.
Yeah. Maybe we'll create more videos in 2021.
I more or less
know.
I just use it to look at stupid people
That
sometimes.
seems to be what TikTok is for, actually.
I watch dance videos. That's pretty much in.
Is
Yeah.
that right? All right. So
So Instagram and Facebook and podcasts.
Facebook and all the podcast listeners, Bourbon and Blondes. Josh, thank you for being here 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah.
You're a
Thanks
road
for having
warrior.
me. Thanks for having me.
And then Nate, thank you. Dustin, studio audience, everyone. And then Abby and Alaina with Bourbon and Blondes, thank you. And that'll conclude part one. We're going to go quick intermission if you guys are on the live. And if you guys are listening to audio, like I said, 148.2 will be active listening. So guys, happy Whiskey Wednesday. Happy holidays, everyone. Happy Hanukkah. Everyone's celebrating that currently.
Cheers. Yeah.
And then Merry Christmas and just all the holidays. If we don't see you before the end of the year, Happy New Year.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Clear on the part one. If you guys are listening still on the feed, please share it. We're going to get into this active listening, which is something. Yeah, you want to crack the garage.
Yeah. Well, now that we're in an intermission, Steve, I have something for you.
Okay.
Cool.
I don't know if I should be nervous or excited.
Is there a surprise? Is it Adidas pull-away pants?
No.
Track pants. For my old man walks when I want to kick it up a notch.
Just want to scare the neighbors a little.
I'm not handing over.
Is it a blowtorch?
Oh, I actually want a blowtorch now that I've seen so many cocktails made with and like food products made with blowtorches.
Oh my gosh.
What is that?
This is.
It's called a booze box, but there's something different inside about it.
So,
Ooh,
yeah, this is a custom booze box for travel or just looking badass. And it's got
That's
the
so
Bourbon
cool.
and BS logo on there.
That's awesome.
Well, and open it up, and you'll see what makes it a little different versus what this company makes normally. So if you open it up inside and see if you hold it up to the camera.
Trying.
So it's got a handle so you can carry it upright.
Okay.
So you can put your bottle in this compartment, and it'll hold just about any size bottle in there.
Do this. Sorry, I'm gonna. So you guys.
Yeah,
can see.
make it bigger.
Oh yeah,
I
yeah.
want to see it.
So your bottle, so the handle's here. So when you hold it upright, the gravity's working, keeps the bottle down there.
Okay.
But then you open up this compartment right here, and you can store a bunch of cigars in there. So if you're going away for the weekend or something, you can put a bottle and put a bunch of cigars in there.
Going there for the weekend, go to work with that.
You got files.
All my
None of your
important
business.
files.
All documents. This is amazing, man.
Yeah.
Like a
So this
laptop.
comes out of a company here in Ohio, in Lorain, Ohio, called H&S Custom Designs.
Oh my gosh.
And they do single bottle carriers, they do 2 bottle carriers, they do 4 bottle carriers, and then if you're someone who's more into wine, they actually do a crate that will hold up to 8 bottles of wine. And so this is kind of a twist on the one that my wife had made for me several years ago.
Yeah.
So he's kind of changed the design a little bit, but this is not something that you're going to find on the website. So like this is something that I had to work with Chuck specifically to create this design for
Is
the
he
box.
willing to do others?
Yes, he will do others.
All right.
Absolutely.
All right.
If you sit there and you call up Chuck at H&S Custom Design, which that's their website, that's also their Yahoo account for email. Like if you mention, if you mention me, Nate Hale, and you mention that you want the one that carries bottle and cigars, he'll know exactly what you're talking about.
Todd Conley, please link that, please. He wants to know.
Yeah, I'll put that in the comments.
Thank you very much, man.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that's something I'd been talking to him about for most of this year, was getting that together. And typically he has a booth at the All American Quarter Horse Congress, which is here in Ohio every year. This year, with everything going on, the Quarter Horse Congress was canceled. So I was like, "Hey Chuck, if you got time, you think you can bust this? You think you can bust this out before Christmas?" It's like the Bourbon and BS logo that's on it. It's actually stitched, so it's not like it's laser engraved into it. It's stitched in there, and he's got different skins, different colors.
Yeah, what is that?
That is emu.
Emu.
Nope.
Emu.
Emu.
No.
Yes.
I told Chuck specifically because he sent me the pictures and he said emu. I thought it was ostrich too. No, that's emu. But yeah, he's got different colors and different.
Ostrich is too basic.
Yeah.
Gotta go emu.
Mine's blue ostrich. So
I wasn't insulting the ostrich. I'm not saying that.
No,
but emu.
But like when my case was built, the dimensions for the bottle section of it were specific to be able to hold a bottle of Angel's Envy. And so that's what mine is catered to. But like if you have a regular bottle that you like to take with you, whether it's something a little bit shorter and fatter, like you can send him those dimensions and he can actually cut the pieces to fit that. So it doesn't necessarily have to be the same size, but that'll fit, pretty much anything. That'll fit your tall Willet bottles or anything like that.
Damn.
The one that he does for wine, it was it started out again as a custom piece.
Yeah.
He had a client that also owns property in Australia and goes there every now and then.
Of course.
And so when he goes there, he likes to bring back some of the Australian wine. And he's putting it on a plane. So the caveat there was that with 6 bottles of wine, it had to weigh less than 50 pounds.
Yeah.
So he had to create the box big enough to fit 6 bottles, but also have enough foam and padding in it to where those bottles aren't going to get damaged. And so when he got done building that with 6 bottles of wine, it came in at like 48.5 pounds.
Wow.
So yeah,
No, I'm gonna take that inside.
Oh, and yeah, the other cool thing he can do, and this is just an option if you want it, he can actually put in like a touch light up in the roof of it. So like you open the box and you press the light and it shines down on the bottle, and then like the plates that are at the bottom that actually hold the bottle in there. You can have different sayings or whatever put on those. You can have different colors on the inside. You can have the panels be different colors.
Can you send us a link for this? Because I feel like I need about 8 of them.
Yes, I can.
I don't actually need them. I just want them. Yeah.
Well, that was kind of the same thing with mine and with Steve's. Really, it's like, is it something that we absolutely need? No, but is it something that's just awesome and badass to have? Yes.
To be honest,
it looks awesome.
This is something that's going to make me have picnics and go outside more often.
Yeah.
I'll take it.
Yeah, and like I said, just the single box ones are literally, they're like 5 inches wide. So
perfect.
I mean, if you have a
easy to carry.
Yep. So yeah, if you go to, I'll put the website in the comments. But yeah, he does, like I said, single bottle, double, 2 bottle, 4 bottle. He calls them booze boxes.
Booze boxes.
And he even makes like pistol and rifle cases too. So I got my dad a rifle case years ago for Christmas. There's places on them to where you can actually put a lock if you want to lock it.
Oh, cool.
There's keys. So like inside there's keys there to where that latch that's on it, you can actually lock the latch. So yeah, don't forget the keys.
Yeah, I don't want to lock that.
Don't lose the keys, or otherwise you'll be calling me to get my keys. Maybe.
Yeah, probably. You want to pick out 3 of these guys here for us, and then we'll get started here. Nate, thank you very much. It's awesome.
Yeah,
you're welcome.
It's amazing, man.
That's incredible.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you.
And a happy new year.
Best part of the holidays. Very thoughtful gifts. I love it.
That's right. That's absolutely right. What do we got?
I'm doing the Monte Cristo Nicaragua series, which was also done by AJ.
Do the Spirit 2.
Spirit 2.
I'm gonna need help on that one. It's childproof. Thank you.
Disappointing.
It's like everything I do.
It's just like it's childproof. You're like,
yeah.
Well, while we're not really talking about anything specific, can we all pay attention to Alaina's pot behind her? It's a disco ball planter.
So my friend dropped this off at Still 60. Oh, the whole screen went on me. My friend at Andrew at Still 630 Distillery in St. Louis. I'm trying to put my flashlight on. I don't know if it's gonna work to do like
it's reflecting perfectly fine without the flashlight.
I know. So yes, it is absolutely amazing.
The disco ball planter.
Yes, it is the best gift next to having a cigar and alcohol holder for you.
Same
but
thing,
yes,
same
same. Yeah. So no, this is great. This is what the season is about. Is thoughtful, amazing gifts that bring you joy. And I put a disco light on that earlier and dancing queen music. So that's what I was doing before jumping on.
And we missed it.
Well, yeah,
She'll send you a video because she's sending it to everyone. So
no shame in my game.
And the way it should be. You guys ready for part 2 here?
Yes.
Yes. Send out a tweet there.
Yes.
All right.
I haven't tweeted in 6.5 years.
Yeah.
Not missing much, I tell you what.
I don't miss it.
Yeah. Welcome back to the Bourbon and BS podcast. This is Beyond the BS, part 2 of episode 148. We are still here with Josh Bentley from Altadis USA. Josh, 2 weeks in a row. Technically 4 episodes because it's part 1, part 2. So
yeah,
just
thanks for having me.
Blowing up.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Blowing up. Nate Hale as well.
Hi.
On his phone there.
I'm trying to post the.
All right. That's fine. And then if you guys are just tuning in on the audio, you don't know yet, but if you're on the video, obviously you know we've got Bourbon and Blondes, great podcast crew, Abby and Alaina from St. Louis.
Hello.
It's always a pleasure. Thank you guys for doing this.
Thanks for having us. We love this. We love hanging out with y'all.
And they are also a part of the Bourbon and BS community page on Facebook, which has been great. I think this is great. I know people are still doing a lot more online because everyone's still, not everyone, but a lot of people are still working from home and they're able to do more stuff online. So it's a great community page, kind of a continuation of the podcast and what we do here. First part every week is the whiskey and cigars. We were drinking the Basil Hayden's 10-year bourbon, which check out part 1 for information about that as well as ratings. I think 2 of us are still smoking the Monte Cristo 1935, which is commemorating 85 years for the Monte Cristo brand.
Yep.
Which is fantastic.
Yeah.
And again, part 1, we talked about that. And thank you to our sponsors, Tinder Box at Easton, Altadis USA, BS Cigar Company, and also patreon.com/Bourbon and BS podcast. This is a way that you guys can contribute, get t-shirts. We've got more stuff coming in 2021. So thank you guys very much for the support. Helps us do all this stuff as far as get the video out there, get the audio out there, bottles, cigars, everything helps.
Yeah,
absolutely. You guys are amazing. And we're going to get you guys some thank you gifts for that in 2021 if you guys haven't received them already.
Can we be included in that?
I just gave you the website, but no, absolutely.
Okay,
I think you guys deserve. All right, next round, you guys just send me the t-shirt size, and we'll get you some t-shirts out there.
I really, personally, I just want the one for St. Patrick's Day.
Oh, you want?
Yeah,
I want
the one that you're sporting.
Well, you said you were going to do them, so just lump me into that one.
What's the shirt say for anyone new?
Yeah, pour one more, light up another. We'll figure this out together. And on the back is the Bourbon and BS podcast original logo as well. So
I love it.
Tri blend, next level shirt, fantastic shirt.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, next level's good brand.
It is. It is. So tonight, part 2, we are talking about active listening. This is something that I will be honest, I
struggle
working on.
Okay.
Working on, growing on.
Work in progress.
Always a work in progress. I'm not even gonna to frame the conversation. I've got some stuff here that we can talk about, but Abby and Alaina, I'll put it to you guys first. When you think of active listening, is this a struggle? Is this something that you guys are really good at? What do you guys think of that definition of active listening?
Alaina, go first.
Okay. All right. So, so active listening has definitely been, so having a tinge of ADHD already, and the goal of active listening is to not always, and I think this is probably an issue with like 90% of anyone you talk to, is people oftentimes before you say the next thing, they want to come up with it's called internal listening, so like listening to speak. So I'm listening to you to like come up with the next thing to say to you. Yes. And so active listening to me is like the opposite of that. It's like, let me listen to you, let me digest what you're saying, and let me kind of like take a moment. And I think a lot of us too have a problem with awkward, quote unquote, awkward silence. So it's like, let me take some time to actually think about what I want to say to you before I say it. And like, I had a thing this week with a friend of mine, well, just yesterday, and something that comes to mind often for me is I ask, do you want feedback? Because like some people are not talking to you to get feedback at all. And I think oftentimes, especially somebody with my personality, I'm a fixer. So I want to like fix the situation, and they tell me, oh, I'm having issues with my boyfriend. I'm like, okay, well, tell me about it. They tell me about it. And then I want to fix the problem or tell you what's wrong with them or you. Whereas maybe I'm just unloading on you and I just don't really want to have a fix to the problem. So.
And that's the thing I struggle with. I may not listen to people's advice when they give it to me, and people that know me very well, I'm not always that good at it because I feel like I'm still going to do what I want to do. But I've gotten better at taking advice. But when people come to me, I'm kind of like you, Alaina. People come to me with something going on. Mm-hmm. When I'm talking to someone about a problem or just talking in general, like I'm in it to engage and I want to get feedback. And there's a part of me, and this is what the work in progress is that I'm also like you, is that I'm a fixer. It's like I want to help. I don't want to just like, I'm not good at, for example, like when I'm going over some of the things that's going on in my life right now, and I talk to Nate, he is a good active listener, and it's refreshing. But for me, the way my personality is like he'll sit there and I'll tell him what's going on, and he just kind of like, he's like, okay. And I'm like, in my mind sometimes, and I haven't told Nate this.
This has been over the last month.
So sometimes I'm like, you know what I mean? Like, fucking say something. Like, Jesus.
Like, can you just respond instead of say okay?
I want a response, and therefore that's the struggle for me. Is that me active listening when I originally hear that kind of definite like or that term. Active listening is like, yeah, I'm engaged. Let's do this. Like, yeah, like that's the fixer side of it. Like, you tell me you want to vent, and it's like, cool, I'm gonna let you vent. And then
And
it's
then
like,
we'll
I
talk
just
about
heard
it.
everything you want to say. And I'm like, I can't, it's hard for me still to just sit there and just be like, so you really don't want me to say anything about this. Like, you don't want my opinion. Like, you just want to vent, because I don't work like that. And that's, I think a big part of it is that for me, like you're saying, like, I want to be like, okay, I hear what you said. And this is what I think you should do. And then, blah, 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 and then I just, unload on them.
Well, if
it's like, this is like,
well, if you notice, over the course of the last few weeks, with all those talks that we've had, a lot of times after you've said what you've wanted to say initially and you get the ball rolling,
I repeat it over and over again.
Well, not that. Like, what's one of the first things I do? Like,
look down at your phone and play Angry Birds.
No.
Second thing.
Okay, so Steve, this is active. Paying attention.
I sit there and I ask you questions.
You do ask questions. I think that's a big part.
I ask you a lot of questions, to get more clarification, and it's not so that way, I can have a better response to what you've said. If you say something and then I ask you a question about what you just told me, it makes you think about the answer as well.
Yeah.
Instead of me offering a fix or offering my opinion or my judgment, I'm putting the ball back on you to evaluate it yourself.
You get to process it.
Now, if you want me to just, come right out and judge you or give you advice, like,
it's not about judging necessarily.
No, but I think that's one of the things that people who don't actively listen do. While someone's talking, they're constantly thinking in their head they're either thinking of advice or they're thinking of judgment.
Yeah.
I think that's what a lot of people do. People may not necessarily say the judgment part out loud. They'll say the advice part.
Always judging.
They'll say the advice part, but they're judging inside. That part just isn't typically vocal.
So here's something that I sent these guys, below are some of the features of active listening. And this is from verywellmind.com. Neutral and non-judgmental, kind of what you're talking about there. Patient. And that's what you had said, Alaina. Periods of silence, I believe, are not filled, which awkward silence is called awkward silence for a reason.
It's good in person-to-person conversation, not necessarily good for a podcast, but
it's not good on radio. Absolutely. Verbal and non-verbal feedback to show signs of listening. Example: smiling, eye contact, leaning in, mirroring. Mirroring, I like that part. Asking questions, reflecting back what is said. And Todd said, "I'm sorry. Wait, are you saying?" I think that's what he was kind of explaining there. Is that something you can say? Ask for clarification again, right there, and then summarizing. Those are all, again, for me, it's where I struggle with it is like, that's very, very good. And it's about control, right? When you're listening, it's about controlling in a sense, and it might be more effort for people like myself, is you control the fact that you really need to kind of sit on your hands and listen to them and wait for them. A lot of times I look at conversations, and I think part of it is with, texting is one of the most common forms of communication these days. And therefore it's like, not only is it taken out of context and everything like that, you don't really know the inflection on things and stuff like that. But when you're doing it the person, I'm more of the person that is more engaged. So that is where it's like, not just the fixer part of it, but it's like, we're having a conversation. And that's where it is, sitting on your hands and doing some of these things, some of the things that Nate's talking about, some of the things that this list is, which is basically really sitting back and almost comparing it. They compare it to much like a therapist listening to a client, which, like, I went to years ago, marriage counseling years ago. And it was something that, I'm, again, the type of person, I'm not really aggressive when it comes to that, but it's like when I unload or I'm talking, like, they ask you a question, you answer the question, and they're like, okay. And you're like, that's it. That's all. That's
what am I paying you for?
Yeah, it's like in the movies.
Give me
Like,
something.
what are you writing down in your notebook over there? I want to know. I want to know. Like, can I read that? And like, no.
No, they just go, how does that make you feel?
Yeah.
That's an important question.
Well, and to your point, Steve, I think that an important part of active listening is checking in with yourself in the midst of a conversation. And when you find yourself, and this is just a part of my own personal growth, I've realized when I find myself fixing something, like if Abby's telling me a problem and with her boyfriend, and I'm like, I want to fix it and I want to tell you based on my own experience, but I know that maybe Abby doesn't react well to when I give all my own personal experience, because maybe it feels like I'm overshadowing by telling her, oh, well, I experienced this, and it's taking away from her feelings. And also, if I find myself trying to fix it, I have to ask myself, why am I trying to fix this? Why am I inserting my own personal experience into this situation? Am I finding her situation extremely personal to me? Is it triggering something in me? Is her issue or her question triggering something in me that's making me give a very personal or certain response to it? So I think that's like, honestly, it's 2020 in a fucking nutshell, because I've literally feel like I have a team of people at this point, between a therapist and a coach and like all the other people I've hired this year. But I think the checking in with yourself is the biggest point, because there's no shame in this game. Like, maybe there's going to be a situation where we're talking and I'm going to really fuck up, right? Like, I'm not going to show up the way I want to.
Right.
Don't shit on yourself for that, right? Don't shame yourself for that. Maybe tell your friend or your significant other, whoever it is, like, hey, I actually don't really feel great about that conversation we had. Like, I wanted to show up like this, but I think maybe I was going through X, Y, and Z, or maybe I was being triggered by whatever you were saying. Do you want to talk about it any further? Just keeping it open like that too. And like checking in with yourself and being like, why was I triggered by that? Why was I so upset about what that person said that literally had nothing to do with me? Because it may have more to do with you than you think. And that's that's the beauty of like I don't know. It's a lot of self-reflection, which really fucking sucks. I'm pretty tired of it. I'm pretty tired of it, to be honest with you.
Well, it's like, I've been self-reflecting for 3 years. Can we move past this, please?
Adulting is just not my jam.
It's hard. Active listening is hard.
Yeah.
Well, I think because it's not the fixing. Fixing is what we always say. It's for at least for me, and I think a lot of people, it's you want to help. You feel like this person is coming to you. And we're talking about, so for example, like someone brought up business, that in sales and in general, listening is important, and the power of silence can be huge. That's absolutely true, especially in business, or if you're trying to, I don't want to say manipulate, but if you're trying to kind of not control, if you're trying to basically stay engaged and let that person, in business, sometimes it is, let them flounder a little bit. You know what I mean? It's just kind of like, they say something and whoever says something first loses type thing. But I think it's the helping, if we're talking about these situations that we're currently discussing, it's you want to help that person. They're coming to you. And again, my initial response is they're coming to me for help instead of just venting, because I don't typically, I'll vent. I want you to say something. If it's reversed, I want you to talk to me and tell me your opinion of it. And you're absolutely right. It's easy to relate it to what you've been through. Well, I'm hearing what you're saying. And that actually reminds me of when I was dating this person, or when I was going through this life struggle of like health or whatever, like family relations or something like that.
I think that borders on topping.
It's topic.
No, what they call topping.
Oh, topic. Topping is, I think, more in typically a general situation. Sometimes, I think it's a terrible thing to do is top someone when they're coming to you with a problem. And it's almost like you come across as saying like, that's nothing. Let me tell you about a time I had to deal with this. And you're like, well, that
doesn't help me.
What I'm going through is still happening. So that doesn't really relate. So again, that self-reflection, I think knowing your audience, knowing your audience and what they want from you. And that's tough, because, and that's one of the reasons why I think some of this is friends, this is everything else. But when it comes to like the typical relationship, a lot of times the male and female, it's you get to that point where you're trying to talk to them, you're trying to help them through things or whatever it might be. And you're not trying to top them necessarily. You're just trying to really guide them through it. And if you ask them, it's like, well, well, especially if you know the person for a long time, you're like, so do you want my opinion or not? And they're like, no, I just want you to listen to me. And then at the end of it, they're like, well, aren't you going to say something? And you're like, well, I thought you didn't want me to say something. And they're like, well, no, say something. You're like, I feel like I'm going to lose here.
Yeah, it almost feels like a trap, right? Like,
sometimes.
I don't know. I think
it's a lose-lose almost at times.
Personal opinion is active listening is different for everyone, right? It's very much like expressing your emotions. Everybody is different. So when it comes to friends or partners, you just kind of have to learn how everyone acts and understands it. For me, I think Alaina and our relationship is a very good example. Like when we first met, she would tell me about like certain things she was going through. And I was trying to be like, oh, well, here's my advice. Like, this is what I think you should do, blah, blah, blah. And I was just like offering things when it turns out that may not actually be all she wanted. She just needed a moment and a space to just get everything out on the table. And so there's a learning phase to active listening, right? So you have to understand the person who is coming to you with things that they just need to talk about or explain or vent. And my biggest thing in active listening, because I think I'm also a fixer. I don't know, Alaina, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I want to fix everything. I want people around me to be happy. I want them to have happiness in their life. So I want to get them to a place where that is a realistic solution. But
you don't want to be hurting, obviously, either. That
right.
Your heartstrings.
And with active listening, I think the two most important things that I've learned is I can't come from a place of judgment and advice. So I just need to let them get it all out. Just like be there, like the blank, Steve, like you were saying, like, okay, yeah, okay, cool. All right, whatever. And then like Nate, you said, it's like, well, how does that make you feel? And it just kind of touches on these pieces where like it almost puts them in a place where like, okay, well, this happened. This is how I feel, that kind of thing. And then from there, you can look at them and say, well, how do you want me to show up for you in this situation? How do you want me to support you through this? And I think, I don't know, like I said, active listening is different for everybody. And if you just kind of listen to absorb and then you let them get through all of it and say, how can I show up for you? How can I support you through this? To me, that's been the biggest lesson, because I didn't used to say that.
Yeah.
I used to be like, okay, well, here's what I think you should do. And this is all these things that I've been through that make sense to me. And that's not always helpful.
I think there's something also you can ask, and this is, it's funny. Business is easier than personal relationships for
100%.
A lot of people. So it's one of those things when someone came to me, especially my previous career, I'd have an employee come in like with this problem with this other employee or with this customer or whatever it is. And you kind of I had this saying where it was just like, well, what do you think we should do? What do you think we should do about it? Or how do you want to handle it? And that's something that when it comes personal, you have more emotion. You have more of those ties to it, and you do want to fix it. You're not trying to grow that person like I would with an employee. It would be more of, I would try to fix it. I'd be like, all right, well, so I hear what you're saying. So this is what I think. And to you, how do you want me to show up? My side of it is what I've learned and become more aware of recently is, so how do you want to handle it? Or what do you think? And what's the next step? And that's the active listening and asking the questions, but it's the open-ended questions. It's not like, are you okay? It's more of, all right, absolutely. I hear what you're saying. So like, what's on your mind? Like, where do you want to go with it? Off the rip right now. And then you can, the active listening is also getting to the point. If they ask you, what do you think? Have you ever been through something like this? That's when you offer that other part of the advice that comes so naturally because you want to fix it, or we're all fixers. It seems like most of the group here and a lot of people out there on the feed, but it's the asking, getting them to start almost solving the problem themselves and empowering that person to get through their thoughts, because venting is one thing and talking to someone and listening to someone, that's one stage of the conversation. And sometimes you do have to say, you know what, taking what you like, you asked that question, how do you want to handle it, or where's your head at on it? And they say, well, what do you think? And you're like, you know what? I can give you my initial thought, or give me just a few minutes, or even let's sleep on it, and I'll actually reach out to you tomorrow after I've had time to reflect on what you said, because I don't want to just, give you a knee-jerk reaction to what you're saying to me. Which I think sometimes that's the awkward silence, because they've unloaded on you, and then you want to just jump on it, but you actually do have to sit on your hands and hold your tongue and say, you know what, that's a lot. Ask them how they're feeling, what they want to do about it, and then before you give the advice, you sit back and you say, let me reflect on that a little bit, because that's a lot, and you're going through a lot of things right now. I know what I want to say, but I don't know if it's going to be the best way to give you advice. So let me think about that a little bit and get back to you, which could be frustrating on their side. But I think
100%.
Pure type of a response where you say, I don't want just like to give you just this word vomit and just throw up all over you and just, overwhelm you with this, because it may not match with what you're thinking. And then therefore you push that person away from the advice, because they're in that mindset right now of exposing themselves. They feel exposed.
I think the benefit of throwing it back at that person is it causes them to become a problem solver. It causes them to have to think about the situation and actually offer their own solution, even if it's not the right solution or the best solution. It still gets them to come up with a solution. So that way they're not just griping. They're also thinking of a solution to it. Because there are some people, and I've dealt with this in my company, there are some people that just want to gripe. That's all they want to do. Yeah. They want to complain about everything that's a problem, and they want someone else to fix the problem. Yeah. But if you sit there and say, okay, what do you think would make this situation better? Now they actually have to start thinking of solutions to the problem. Yeah. Because, it translates from business into personal life, because there are sometimes in our personal lives, we don't always have someone right there with us that we can go and gripe to. Yeah. We have to deal with it on our own, or wait until we can actually have a conversation with someone that can offer a solution.
There's less emotion in business too.
Depends on the business, I think.
Yeah.
Different emotions.
There's different emotions. There's there's sometimes different priorities, right? In my opinion, you want to make the employee, the customer happy, but I mean, the ultimate goal there is the business at hand, and your position, whether you are the owner of the company or you're in a certain level of that. But it's still, there's a lot of things at stake there. But I think that when you add in the personal relationship, whether it be a friend, a relationship, like a romantic relationship, there's everything at stake a lot of the times. You don't want to lose that person as a friend or as a significant other, or someone in your family that you're having tough times with. But with a business, you can go back to work and hopefully it's one of those age-old, I guess, sayings that anyone is replaceable in a business. Typically, you don't want to think that you're replaceable in your position, but a lot of times in the personal realm, you can not replace that person. You can replace that position as a friend or as a significant other as life goes on. But typically there's a lot more emotion and ties to that person that that's the helper side of it. And then also there's the ties to you that you don't want to lose that person out of your life, whether it be a friend or a significant other. So therefore there's a lot more at stake. Josh, you're quiet. What do you think?
Yeah, I was practicing my active listening.
I thought you were just
smoking a cigar.
No, just formulating thoughts, and no. But so I'm hearing a lot of the same thing from everybody, right? And how to interject and how to be quiet. And I think the biggest part of being a positive, active listener, or a I don't want to say doing active listening the right way, but I would say that my biggest thing, or what I would put to this conversation, is that you have to gauge who's coming to you, right? You have to gauge the situation in any conversation, right? Whether it be business, whether it be personal. And what I mean by gauge is you have to understand whether that person is coming to you to just vent, like we were saying, or if they want feedback at that particular moment in time. And all of the parts that you were saying, nobody was correct or incorrect, I would say. But if you know how to gauge that person that's coming to you, and if they just want to vent and get something off their shoulders and they're not expecting feedback at that time, then maybe you would have an opportunity at a later moment, whether you say, hey, let me get back to you or not. But you know that person who's coming to you, or you know that particular situation, and you're able to gauge that and say, you might not even say anything at all. You just, I hear what you're saying. And then later, right, in a day or two, or later on that day, you come back to them and you say, hey, listen, so this is what I might give you advice on. Or you don't even have to frame it that way. It can be all in the frame of reference on how you bring it up. Hey, again, you're repeating and you're going back over what they're saying, and you're saying, may I add this to it? Or, this thought process. Because a lot of times, Nate, what you just said is you're giving it back to them, right? And some people, they don't want that. They're coming to you because they want to hear maybe your advice, whether they're going to say that or not, whether they're going to say, hey, listen, I want you to speak, or hey, I want to hear your side of this. But rather they're just, they don't want you to say, hey, how would you do it in this situation? Or they don't want to actively think of the right answer, but they just want you to give them not even your perspective. I guess it would be your perspective, no matter what, but they want you to interject, and they want you to say, hey, you're being an idiot. Hey, right. You're not thinking correctly at this point of time because you're emotional, right?
Do you think the responsibility to determine whether to listen or give advice is on the person who is talking or the person listening?
So that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that you have to gauge that when that person is coming to you. Oftentimes in a personal relationship, you know that person, right? You know that person really well. Yeah, you might not know that person at all. Or in a professional, relationship, again, it could be the same thing. You could have known that person for quite a while, and they're coming to you professionally and saying, hey, this is my situation, right? Whether they say, what do you think about it or not, but they're giving you, that particular situation. And that's why I'm saying you have to personally, and I guess it comes with a certain maturity. It comes with a certain bit of, of wisdom, that, somebody who is a little wet behind the ears, whether it be professionally in that profession or something, might want to interject and jump in and say exactly what you guys are saying. Hey, this is my personal experience with this, and this is what I know about this, and this is what you should do. But if you think about it a little bit more, or you have a little bit more wisdom behind you, or you know that person a little bit better, then you know how to gauge that particular conversation, and you can say, hey, this is the frame that you're bringing it to me in, and you're really emotional right now, so let's sleep on it, or let's talk about it a little bit later. And that might bode you better. That might give you a little bit more credibility down the road when that person's going to come to you in some other situation.
With recent events, Steve, that you brought up, you coming to me.
Yeah.
When you were first coming to me with what was going on with you personally.
Yeah.
Initially, like, I recognized that you were just telling me what was going on.
Yeah.
And I was listening to what was going on, and I wasn't trying to fix things or offer advice a month ago. Like, I was hearing you out and and recognizing that there was an issue and listening to what your issue was. It wasn't until like you were talking about it and coming to me repeatedly with it that I started to then offer my 2 cents.
Yeah, your flip of the switch was, and that's kind of what I was going to touch on what Josh was saying. It's when I said, "What do you think?" And that is, again, being in the active listening side of it, is that you're not just waiting on it, already ready to speak and give them the opinion. I think that you do wait for them to say, "What do you think?" as opposed to what we were talking about earlier of being a fixer. You listen to it; they're still in that venting mode. And I got to be honest, I believe this is not a unique situation for one or a few people. But when you are coming to someone, and again, we dove right into this whole thing of like this really kind of more intense, like, you got a problem type active listening, because it is probably the most common and hardest area to actively listen is you have to wait for that, because I know how I am when I come to someone with something that's going on. I already know what I want to hear. So when I come to you and I'm telling you this, I am looking for reinforcement of what I already am hoping for or wanting the solution or outcome to be. So therefore, I'm looking just for that reinforcement. You tell me otherwise, now I'm upset with you. And I think
that's a good friend, though, that tells you the opposite of what you're looking for.
but you don't realize it at the time. That's down the road. We're like, you know what? Fuck
that anger comes first.
But that's ego, and that's what you have to recognize within yourself sometimes. And I want to say for you guys, like, we've been talking about the onus being a lot on the listener, but there is an onus both on the speaker and the listener. And so I think as somebody, so say I'm coming to you guys with an issue that I'm having with something all three of you are doing, for example, it is my responsibility to be like, hey, I'm gonna tell you this, and I want to have a constructive, for lack of a better word, conversation with the three of you with something that happened and it upset me, and this is like what upset me, this is why it upset me, and this is how it ended up making me feel. Or even could have a result driven, like, you guys did this and this is how it made me feel, and if it doesn't get resolved, then I feel like I have to do this, so like, it's not just always on the listener too. I feel like too, and I don't know a really good way of putting this, but I think as a woman, sometimes we unload and we do things and we expect the man, or in this situation, at least for me personally, we expect the man to like own up to it a certain way. And when it doesn't go our way, maybe we'll be upset or we'll act out a certain way. And then we're like, oh, it didn't go the way that I thought it was going to. You didn't react the way I wanted. So now I'm going to react to you a certain way because I'm pissed at you. Well, you're oftentimes deflecting your own shit that you're upset about onto that person because they're not reacting a certain way that you want. That's a control issue. And so let's take it a step back, and maybe how you're reacting isn't the issue. It's maybe how I'm coming to you, how I've asked to come to you. And I think it's important to sometimes, for people who are very empathetic and listeners and fixers, I think it's important to come, if I had a problem and I came to Abby and I know Abby's having a tough week already, I'm going to come to her and I'm going to be like, hey, can I unload something on you? Like, it's really upsetting me. And especially it has to do with her personally. I feel like it's important to ask, can I unload on you whatever this issue is? Because maybe she doesn't have the capacity for it right now. And if she doesn't, then
you have to preface the conversation in a way.
Absolutely. Yeah. She has
What was that, Abby?
I said you have to preface the conversation, right? So if I were coming to you guys, I was like, I need you to listen to me. I need you to hear me. I need you to understand without judgment, without advice. So I need you to be the active listener in this situation. You have to almost preface the conversation, right? So as the speaker, that is my responsibility, is I need to come to you and say, hey, I'm going to need some heavy conversation. I'm going to need some reaction, maybe some advice, maybe just listening. I know you're going through it a little. Can I come to you with this right now? And I think that also, as the speaker, sets up the conversation as I need an active listener. I need someone who's going to be there for me, who's going to listen, let me get through it, and then come to me with the non-judgment, the chaotic, just like the simple listening.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but that's a lot of responsibility, especially when there is emotion tied into it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you don't go into it. That's why I was saying, like, the business side's a little easier for me, and I think a lot of people, because you don't go into it with typically as much emotion, at least on both sides, right? When you're you have a vested interest in the individual as opposed to just the situation. Yep. I think you do come into that, so you don't come in. It's like, well, I wrote down all these notes and I just need you to kind of look over my presentation here and then, read it over and then come back to me with your notes. And it's not like that. It's more of there's passion there. And so that's why I like having this conversation as far as a topic, is because this is something that you kind of want to talk it out in a more objective way of just the principles of listening, whether it be active or otherwise. It's just you want to be able to look at, and I think it's a great point, the responsibility. It's a true conversation, but you have to gauge, the audience. You have to gauge what the goal is here, and that's the hardest part, because you can misread the audience, and if you think that they're just venting, then they're going to get upset with you that you didn't offer the advice. You offer the advice, and they're just venting. And then all of a sudden they're upset with you on that side. Same thing when you go to someone, and when you go into someone, it is, I think, a little bit more of that responsibility that we don't think about when you're coming into the situation. Because again, I think, and I don't think I'm alone here, is that I already have kind of a preconceived notion of what I want to do with this. And so it's not fair necessarily that I put that on someone else, that when I come into that and I say, hey, can I talk to you for a second? Or there's something I want to talk to you about. And I talk to them about it. Again, having this preconceived notion of what I want to hear from that person, it's not constructive unless I literally tell them and continue to unload and say, well, this is what I want to do. And you hope they agree with you, which is the way I typically operate, because I've already thought this through 1,000 times in 1,000 different scenarios of what I want to come out of this. And they give me honest feedback, and I'm like, you know what? Never mind.
That's not what I wanted to hear. Get out of here.
It's your fault that you told me something different.
And I think that's part. I think that's part of gauging that.
Yeah,
is knowing that person, right? And I think you said it before, Steve. Knowing your audience, right? Knowing that person, and whether they're coming to you and they just want to hear something, right? They want to hear you,
which is okay.
Well, which is okay, but in a sense it's okay, and in a sense it's not, because you don't tell them what they want to hear. They're going to go to the next person, and they're going to do the same thing until they get a person that validates whatever their concern
or
whatever.
Says
that is exactly what I do. Get out of my head.
But
exactly.
You don't agree with me? Next. Hey, you over there. I've never met you before. Let me tell you what's going on in my life.
Just agree with me and don't give me your opinion. Thank you.
Wait. When you speak truth to that person, and this is somebody coming to you that trusts you, right?
Yeah.
And that's a big part of it, right?
Yeah.
Is that person is coming to you more than likely because they trust you and they trust your opinion. And you tell them something that they don't want to hear. It is very, I have this awkward silence because I can't come up with the exact word, but it's in part to you to say, hey, listen, this might not be what you want to hear at this exact moment.
That's a great statement right
but
there.
but I
that.
am
Yeah.
telling you this because I have your best interest at heart,
Mhm.
right? And I know you as a person, and you know me, and you evidently came to me and felt comfortable sharing with me,
Yeah.
and you trust me. So I'm giving you this bit of advice, and I'm pleading with you.
Yeah.
Take a moment, think about it, sleep on it, what have you. And I think that's part of that verbiage that I used before, gauging the person and the conversation that you're having that active listening experience with.
And remember, it's not for me, again, it's you want to have the answer, or you think you might have the answer when you're listening to what they're going through because you've been through something similar, or because you understand. You say you go through this whole thing of active listening. I'm asking, asking more questions. Ian says, some of the people I love talking to, when I have something heavy, I ask more questions and make less statements. And that's what, Nate, when we were talking about, like you and I, that you do have more questions. I think it's very, very good. Sometimes people aren't looking for the answers. Sometimes they're looking for what they want to hear, and other times they want to vent. But I think there's a lot of in between there. And as a listener, you almost have to understand that you weren't necessarily prepared. And even if you are educated on the subject, the answer in your mind is not necessarily the end all be all in the given situation because of the preconceived notions that they might have coming into it. They want to vent, or they already think they know what they want to do with the scenario, and they're looking for that confirmation. So when you come out with something that's completely logical, or you're talking to someone, they come out with something completely logical. I hear what you have to say. They actively listened, but then they give they don't say it. Hopefully they're like, well, that's simple. This is what you need to do. It's not that cut and dry. It's not like, hey, what button do I press on this thing to make it go? And you're like, oh, that one. You know what I mean? Like, that's easy. Because if they're still looking at it, you're like, I don't know if you're right. I'm like, have you tried it? I'm like, no, I haven't, but I'm still looking at all the buttons here. And you're like, that's the go button. But that's not always the case. It's not that cut and dry. It's not black and white like that.
Well, I also think part of active listening is on the person who initiated the conversation. So like if you're, saying, if you're venting, or, you're saying what's going on, you're asking someone you actually want to hear their advice, you have to actually actively listen to their advice as well.
Yeah.
So something that popped in my mind, every time Josh is on the podcast, and even some weeks when he's not on the podcast, we talk about board of directors that Josh brought up very early on when he was on the podcast before.
It's a t-shirt right there.
Yes. Like, what happens when you bring up something to your board of directors and the advice they offer is not what you wanted to hear? It doesn't validate what you feel, and they offer something different than what your gut was telling you.
Yeah.
How do you process that and actually listen? Because you have that board of directors for a reason.
Yeah.
I don't know if Alaina or Abby are familiar with what Josh was talking about before with his board of directors. So
let Josh explain it.
Explain the board of directors.
Yeah. So in my life and early on, as Nate alluded to, in a conversation we talked about, and I brought up, I have a board of directors in my life. I have a group of people that I know, that I trust, that I go to in situations in my life, professionally and personally, that I am able to bring up these sort of topics, any life topics in my life, and I trust them. Right. I've entrusted in them, and I've gone to them, and they know they're on my board of directors. I say, hey, listen, I've chosen you. You're on this board, right? This board of directors in my life, where a lot of the times they're above me, right? In wisdom, in age, in
experience,
career.
or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I've entrusted to them to be able to speak into me. And this goes even in something that I don't come to them, but they might see me getting off of a path, but I've entrusted in them, and I have to listen to them. And I say I have to listen to them because I've entrusted that to them.
And that's what I'm getting at.
That
Like,
they have the ability to come to me and say, hey, we're seeing something different, Josh.
This is not okay. Or this is different.
You're doing something that doesn't live up to your values, to your standard of living, and we're going to speak into this.
Yeah, and that's what I was getting to. So if you have those people in your life that you trust to go to for advice when you have problems or you have issues, you have to actively listen when they offer that, because you're going to them for advice, or they are offering suggestions because they notice something's wrong. You have to actively listen to what they are saying as well, and take that for what it's worth as well, because you trust that person. That's why they're that position. That's why you hold them in that position in that regard. So you have to actively listen to what they're saying back at you as well. That's what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah.
Well, and I'll give you, I don't know if this is going too much into me and Abby's personal business, but something that comes
let's just air it out.
Let's just get it out there.
Well, so when me and Abby first met, I was very unhappy in my own relationship, and Abby was single. And so we bonded on a lot of different levels, but we also bonded very differently because she and I were different, emotionally happy. Really, we were emotionally unhappy, if I'm speaking for myself, but like her advice to me was very different during that time. Fast forward, I'm ending a 3-year relationship, and I come to her, and she's in a year relationship where she's feeling very different in her life and her personal relationships, and just in a very different place where she's at. And I'm in a place where I'm very unsure. I'm going through a breakup, and she gives me very different advice to how she would have given me a year and a half ago.
Sure. Yeah.
And it's based on the position she's in life, and maybe what she's learned along the way of how you listen, and I don't know
how I listen to you specifically in the friendship, right?
Right.
So like you have ways of expressing yourself, and that's, I think, a very important thing to learn in business and in friendships. It's how does this person express themselves, and how can I complement it? And you know, there's always a learning curve. There's always things that you need to pick up on, social cues, body language, verbal cues, things like that. And with Alaina, it was a learning curve, and like our lives have been transitioning the whole time we've known each other. So it's, you know, I'm coming from a different place. Alaina's coming from a different place, but being able to now have the understanding and non-judgment, non-immediate advice giving position in each other's lives, I think has been huge in terms of like the active listening. I'm listening, I'm hearing, I'm understanding you before I start giving advice and feedback on the situation.
Well, I think a lot of times too, people listen a lot more quickly than they can speak, right?
Yes.
So that's when you are
so
doing
true.
listening. That is the patience side of it, is that when people are telling you what they're going through, you're going to do it. I think it's natural. You're going to take it like they're halfway through what they're telling you, and it's like in your mind, you're like. And sometimes if you're not very good at the active listening, you're like, well, I already know what you're going to say.
Right.
I know this is
I already know how I'm going to respond too.
Yeah. So that's the whole thing, is being patient and letting that person finish to a point. So that then you can actually hear their whole thought, because I got to be honest, we all think that we can finish each other's sentences, especially if you know that person, whether you're a friend or a personal, a romantic relationship or whatever. You feel like you know where they're at already. And if you respond in such a manner, it can come across as very abrasive.
It can.
And also, and also it's a point where I feel as though, again, with that helper or fixer mentality, you're already all right. So I hear where you're at now. Let's come up with an action plan. Let's get you through this. Let's get you through this. But it is the responsibility is on both sides, because sometimes you just keep talking and you don't get to your point because it feels good to vent.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
And honestly too, I think it's really important during a major life shift or a life situation. I don't know, anything you're venting something, especially something that feels really major to you. So let's use like a breakup or a death or something. I think it's really
a career
or
move.
a career move. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, like a shift, any type of major shift in life. I feel like it's really important to think about the audience you're talking to. So the person you're getting advice from, they may give very abrasive advice, or they may give very good advice, or it could be a very, a bunch of different things. I think it's important to take into consideration what they're going through and their own experience and how much you know about them, because it also sometimes, like, depending on my life situation, like going through a breakup, I've told somebody and I was like, well, that person that I'm telling may not be really good at being by themselves. So the information that they're giving to me is based on the fact that they're not really good at being single. So should I really like take that for what it is, or should I take that based on that person's personality? And should I really just like gauge, should I really talk about this specific topic with this person because maybe they're in a different position in life that they can't really provide the advice or listen the way I need to.
And Alaina, that's a perfect example of what Nate talked about before, and then I alluded to, is the board of directors.
Yeah.
Because you have that board of directors in place in your life for those specific examples, right? When you have a major life shift or life change in your life at that time, right? What we talked about is a career change, right? Something major happening in a relationship, and all of those people that you have entrusted, that you have already gone through and you have vetted, basically, right? Again, most of those people are either on the same level, which should be a very few, but most of them are above you in their life experience, in those type of situations, maturity, wisdom, and such. So they've already gone through that, and you've already, quote unquote, pre-vetted them, and you've already entrusted in them their advice, and you know that they're going to speak into your situation, right? So you're taking away that that denominator that is unknown, right? Where you're going to go and you're going to search out from this person, and hey, is this person really the right person that I should be talking to about this situation? Because you have those 6 or 8 people that you know that you've entrusted, and you trust their opinion to speak into that type of situation.
And you got to take advice. That's the other part too, right? So we talk about the active listening part of it, but say you are the one that's coming to them. I think active listening, we kind of talked about a little bit, is that it's on both sides. I mean, it is a conversation. We all go to like the initial stuff of, are they venting? Do they want the solution? Do they want that stuff? I think that is a responsibility sometimes on the individual, is that, one thing that I'm really trying to grow and learn and do better is take the advice and not necessarily respond because it's not what I want to hear. If it is what I want to hear, that's easy, right? Like, cool. Like, thanks. You absolutely. You're not the person I want to be talking to. You know what I mean? You're not involved in the situation, the career or whatever it is. You give me that reinforcement. Fantastic. I can move on. It's a lot easier. You give me the reinforcement that I really need. Like, you go to the board of directors and they're on that board of directors. They're the person you're going to for advice. You got to fucking take the advice. And not saying you got to react and do exactly what they're saying to do, but that's the active listening. Take that into consideration, reflect on it, and then it's up to you, or it's up to me to then use that as my already preconceived notion of how I want to solve the issue at hand, and sometimes oversolve, which then doesn't help at all, is to hear what they're saying and then take some self-reflection time and take in all of the advice or all of the input that you've gotten from the individuals that you talk to about whatever you're going through, career change, personal relationship, health issues, whatever it might be. If you're just going to go out and do your own thing again, and you just like, there's no point to even have that conversation. And I think a lot of times we I'm not saying that there's not a time to vent, but I feel like sometimes we overuse the whole venting side of it because we just wanted to hear what we wanted to hear. And then it's like, it's just, what was the point of all that?
Right.
If you just unload on someone, they don't tell you what you want to hear. You walk away from that conversation and then you just keep going through it. And it's just one ear out the other type of a situation where there was no point in that. You could have vented to an absolute stranger at that point because you don't care. Yeah. Wasted breath. You care about it, but you don't care about it enough that you're like, they may be right. And that's one of those things that, it might be months or years down the road. You're like, I remember that conversation. They were absolutely right.
Well, and then we're talking a lot personally, right?
Yeah.
Which hits home with a lot of people. But then there's the professional aspect that we've touched on. But a lot of training programs at professional places will teach this.
Yeah.
When you go in is the active listening part that you as most of the time salesperson, right? Because these sales roles are the ones that are given this training. You're not going to get it in HR. I guess you could because that would be more of an HR role is to actively listen to the person. But so I just contradicted myself. But
a little bit, but it's okay. We'll continue.
We're going to edit that part out
There's no
later.
It's live.
Thank you. But from a sales aspect, though, is actively listening to your customers, right? Whether it be a problem, that they're having in their sales, they're coming to you. You walk into the door, and boom, you get hit with that right away. And the proper process is to, okay, I hear what you're saying, but then it goes into a two-part because a lot of the time you have a relationship with that person that you're calling on. And if you've been in that role for any bit of time, you have built up a working relationship with that person to where a prime example, if I walk into the Tinder Box where Steve and Brian are, and there is a hiccup in business or there's something going on, and I say, hey guys, what's going on? And they give me the problem. And if I repeat their problem to them and I say, okay, I hear what you're saying, Brian and Steve, let me give it to you like this. Listen, that's very formatted, right? That's, that's what they're teaching you in the training.
Yeah.
But you're going to look at me, you and Brian are going to look at me and be really, really odd. Listen, Josh, you've been calling on us for off and on 8 years now. Like what in the world's going on? No, you have to take that and you have to break it down and analyze it a certain way in your own mind to either form a rebuttal, if you will, or come up with a solution that you can help them in this situation. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
You go ahead, Steve.
No, go ahead. No, you're absolutely right because and that's where I think a lot of it too. It takes practice, right? So you're talking about the formal training and everything else. I mean, it takes a lot of practice to make it genuine. Because even if your heart's in it and you're trying to be genuine about it, if you are just like the cue card type of I hear what you're saying, and this is, how does that make you feel? Or like, I hear what you're saying, but this is, you're going off of this again, prescripted. That's perfect. Scripted type of a training thing. It comes across that way.
Yeah.
So that's where I think you really do need to be more vested in that conversation and try to make it more personal to the given situation.
Yeah.
Because it comes across sometimes in that situation, business, personal, whatever. If you're doing the same thing, especially if you've had, like if you've been, like you say, we've been doing business together for a long time. If you've been in a relationship for several years, and every time that person comes to you and you're like, and they already know, you're like, I hear what you're saying, but how do you think we should handle it? And you say that every time they have a problem, it's going to wear
losing credibility.
It's going to wear real thin.
It is.
Yeah.
And then you can take it into a different aspect professionally to where, Steve, you alluded to at the beginning of our conversation, but when it's peer to peer, or even, you know, when somebody with an upper status comes to you and is talking about a problem. And you said earlier, Steve, I think you said something that I don't really know exactly what you said per se, but it was something where you might not be as vested in that conversation or that situation to give them advice. But if you're coming from a leadership mindset, which we talked about in another episode, and everything that I try and do professionally, I think of it through the scope of a leader, because I want to be known in my company as a leader.
Yeah.
So people can come to me. Then you're going to look at that through the scope. You're going to vet that through, you're going to gauge that, right? Another word that I used earlier. You're going to gauge that as a leader. And hey, you're thinking not how would Josh Bentley respond, but hey, how would a leader respond in this certain situation?
Because you want to be that role.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, sometimes you have to again define your role. We talked about it in the conversation, right? It's the same thing when you're a listener, active listener. That's the topic or whatever. But you have to define your role in that situation, in that conversation of how you want to respond.
Which hat are you putting on?
Which hat are you putting on?
Am I putting on the hat of your friend, as your boss, as your subordinate? Like, what's my role in this current situation?
Yeah. Abby and Alaina, like, how do you guys? You guys kind of talked, and it's great that you guys have a nice personal relationship. How long have you guys known each other?
A year and
4
2 years.
months longer than the podcast has existed.
Yeah, so 2 years in October.
So
No,
you talked about how
February.
the situations have changed in life and everything like that.
Yeah.
Besides, I love the point of like knowing where the other person is and knowing almost because you know that person, possibly where their frame of mind will be when you come to them with that issue or whatever you're going through, and you want to have that conversation. How has it changed on both sides, or like in other relationships, business, otherwise? How have you guys evolved? Because that's what this is all about for me. Is in this podcast is the growth side of it. Because the conversations or the listening, or even when you go to that person to have someone else listen, you want them to actively listen. How have you changed and evolved and grown? Because I think that's the whole point of this type of a conversation. It's not only to like listen to it and contribute on the feed and all that, but it's also, where do you go from here when you're confronted with this on either side of the conversation?
Well, I love this question.
So I'm more the emotional between the two of us. So I'm gonna
very true. Alaina does the emotions. I don't.
You're just cold hearted.
So Abby,
usually,
yes. Abby is a bit more abrasive, and I'm gonna be transparent here. And so
I will say it just as quickly as you will.
No, so somebody who's a people pleaser, who is so afraid of rejection and a fear of rejection of friendships, relationships, anything. I had a hard time bringing things to Abby because she can be abrasive, and that's her personality, and there's nothing wrong with it. But I did not know how to talk to her in a way that was cohesive for both of us. So instead of
and let us move forward, it was hard.
And so instead, I just didn't say anything at all because I was so afraid of her reaction that I just didn't say anything. And the more that me and Abby talked, and she was telling me about other people who didn't talk to her about things because of who she is and how that upset her, I was like, and I was like, she wants to know this. Like, she, as a person, wants to know how I feel, despite my fear of her reaction. Because and that is a control thing. And I literally, because my therapist has told me this. Because,
at least you're learning, right? That's the whole point.
Yes, because I mean, I was talking about something about me and Abby in the past, and she was like, "Well, what how do you think it's going to turn out?" And I explained to my therapist how I thought it was going to turn out. She was like, "So what out of that do you fear?" And I was like, "I fear her reaction to it." She's like, "Well, telling her, not telling her versus telling her how you want something to happen or how you want something to go. What's worse?" Like, and I was like, fuck, you're right. Like, I'd rather tell her what's on my mind, how I feel, and where I feel my head is at than just assume that she's not going to react a way that I want. And I'm just not going to tell her because I don't want that reaction.
Mm-hmm.
That's not fucking fair for anybody, right? Like, that's not fair for Abby. That's not fair for me. Like,
it hurts the relationship.
It absolutely does. It absolutely and
well, you stop communicating, right?
Yeah.
So
You just start assuming and you stop communicating. And I don't know, Alaina's points are,
in my opinion, that's quicksand in a relationship.
Oh
right there.
it's especially business and like no matter what the relationship is. And I will be the first to admit that Alaina's explanation of me as a person is correct. Like, I am harsh, I am abrasive. Like, you come to me with something and I will immediately react. Like, there's no holds barred here. I don't mute what I have to say. I don't sugarcoat it, any of that. But in terms of evolving in this relationship and building a podcast and a business together, and to every point Alaina just made, like, do I go to her and be afraid of the reaction, or do I take it to her and just like hope for, like, all of that? It's from my side, it has been so much a learning experience on how to receive someone's opinion and someone's feedback on a situation, especially in building a young business around a podcast. Like, you have to hear everything, good or bad, and you have to be able to say, okay, I just heard this. I need to hit pause and I need to assess the situation. And Alaina and I, it's like building a friendship at the same time, right? So we've gone through business stuff, we've gone through personal stuff. And I think the biggest lesson for me is it ties back into the active listening. Like, I need to listen, and I don't need to listen to respond. I need to listen to understand, because I, as an individual, need to be able to grow. I need to support the people around me. I need to be able to support the business. I need to be able to receive criticism and potentially change how I react. And that is something that is never easy, because you are who you are. So changing a behavior is very complicated and messy and hurtful sometimes. But you know, you have to, the people around you who you trust, your governing board or your board members, or however Josh was saying it earlier, like, you really have to take what they say and apply it to your life. And potentially there's a behavioral change. You have to actively listen to the feedback you're getting and make your life better and the business better and the people around you. Like, there's criticism is hard. It's never fun.
No,
literally never. But if you can actively listen, and potentially the people who are offering advice or saying, hey, Abby, you did this and it really pissed me off, or it really upset me. Okay, let me understand how, and let's build a solution around it.
And to Abby's point, literally this thing, and if I could take one thing out of the money I've spent out of therapy over the years, or over the last 6 months, really,
not cheap.
Yeah, no, it's not. No, it was. Oh my God, it's not. It was, how do you think that other person's going to react? Okay, so I think that person's going to react X, Y, and Z way. How does that change how you feel? How does that change how you're going to approach them? How does that change what you're going to do? And that realizes the realization for me was, I had no control over if I was going to come to any of you with an issue. how I perceived how you would perceive and interact with that issue is really, it doesn't matter, because that should not change how I come to you with an issue.
Or what you say.
So yeah. So if I have a problem with Steve and I'm like, hey, yeah, I mean, just for
Well,
example,
no one likes listening to your voice, so just let us voice our concerns.
Is
Okay.
Let me tell you how I think.
Just
No.
listen to bedtime stories. So if I had a problem with you and I was so worried that you were going to react a certain way that maybe you reacted in the past, I would ask,
Get out
well,
of
why
my head.
why are you fearful that Steve is going to be reactive to that? And I'd be like, well, because this has happened in the past. Okay, well, that is a control issue that I have, right?
Yeah.
Because that's how you acted in the past. If I'm not willing to have that conversation with you now, then honestly, those are a lot deeper questions. Like if I'm not willing to have that conversation with you now, do I want to have that relationship with you? Do I want to have that conversation with you? Am I willing to have that conversation? Am I willing to see the answer that you're willing to give me? If you're not giving the answer that I want, does that mean that we're not going to be friends? We're not going to be so I think it's not just like, sometimes it's so easy to be like active listener, how you're explaining to others. It's also like, what do I want out of this?
Mm-hmm.
Am I not getting what I want out of this? And if I don't get what I want out of it, does it bring out an abandonment issue out of my own personal trauma? Does it bring out a codependency issue out of my own personal trauma? And if it does, can I respond better to you in the future?
So it's two-way street. And just so you know, you are just, again, inside my fucking head these days. It hit a little close to home there. And that's why I wanted the
female
So, Chief, let me ask: are you uncomfortable or?
No, I'm typically very comfortable. It's that's not an issue. No, it's just very close to home. But I wanted to, off of all of that, right? So the last topic that I think is related to everything that you're saying, Alaina, everything you're saying, Abby, everyone on the table here, and people out there on the feed, it's the trust side of it. And Abby, you mentioned that. I was waiting to get to this point before we get to the closing remarks, but it's the trust level of going into that situation. Alaina, you're talking about, you already have this preconceived notion. I already know how this person's going to respond. Abby, significant other, your boss, whatever it might be. I already know how they're going to respond. So you don't even have that conversation. You're selling yourself short. And I feel as though there has been a loss of trust in that relationship, and the feelings that are involved in it. They're suffering at that point. So again, there's that quicksand, right? So if you lose the trust, you need to be able to open yourself up as the listener and as the one coming to the situation, coming to the table with said situation. That if you don't have that trust, the open ears, the open heart, and everything else, if you just already know what they're going to say, they may surprise you, or you already know and you don't want to hear it, even though they may be right and supportive. But the trust level of going into these situations, and as the active listener, you have to like that person. If they are being genuine, they are trusting you with their feelings. And I think that is an important part of this topic, is purely the trust of the other party.
This hits so fucking hard for me right now, because on so many levels, and I'm going to give you a professional work experience example, because I've been giving a lot of personal examples, but I had a boss, quote unquote. So somebody who doesn't necessarily, I work in a corporate environment. So somebody that doesn't necessarily give into my like end of year review, but also still has has the right to have an opinion. And I just started working for them, and I'm having connectivity issues with work. So my emails aren't coming through as fast as they should be, but I could see that there was an issue last week that happened, and she reached out to another person I work for, and I saw the email come through because I have access to their emails and to their calendar, and she wanted to connect with them about me. And so I confronted her, which normally I wouldn't do because I never had the balls originally to ever do this for myself. And I said, hey, I saw this email come through. I want to, if we have an issue or if we need something we need to talk about, I want clarity between us because it builds trust, right? Like, absolutely. In relationships, in anything, me coming to somebody else versus coming to you is going to feel really fucking shitty because it feels like we don't have the relationship to have the conversation, and it breaks down our level of trust, whether it's work, you know, emotional relationships, anything. And so I said to her, and I was like, we ended up having a conversation, which again, I normally wouldn't have ever had on Monday. And I said, hey, this is how it made me feel that you came to somebody else. What can I do for you that builds trust? And she's a bit, I'm being transparent. She's a bit of a micromanager. And she goes, well, when you get an email, I just want to know you're working on it. And I was like, yeah, that's not a fucking long-term solution, but okay. I was like, okay.
Is that how you actually answered that?
No, but my initial
that's how Alaina's like,
yeah.
What do I say? I want to say this, but I'm not going to say it.
And I was like, yeah, that's not a long-term solution of building trust, is having me tell you I am working on something immediately when you email me, because that's not a healthy fucking solution. But I realized in that moment, you don't have trust with me. Yep. So what I need to do is I need to build trust. Okay, how can I do that? Okay, I'm going to let you know when I'm on things, what I'm doing, and I'm going to give it in my head 2 months. And that is the process that I'm going to do for 2 months to build trust with you. And then you know that I'm reliable, where I stand, where my work, where my work standard is. And once that is built, I'm going to have another conversation with you and be like, okay, this is where we're at. This is what I built. This is in my mind, how we've got to this point. How do you feel about it? Okay, you feel good? I'm no longer going to respond to every single one of your emails. That's where I'm at, because I feel like we've built that level of trust. If that changes, let me know. And that's the fucking, honestly, I feel like that's what therapy for the last 6 months. That's what it paid for.
Well, I think that the big thing is the trust, the broken trust there is that they stopped communicating with you. They didn't come directly to you. And I will say also, they didn't tell you, that person did not tell you what they need from you for a more productive relationship, business-wise. And that
100%.
Yeah, and that translates. Go ahead.
Well, and I want to touch on something really quick that I so want to touch on this with women too, because women oftentimes take things so personally, like myself, that has little to do with you and more to do with them. And I want you to remind yourself of that. Yes, I want you to remind yourself of that 9 times out of 10, when somebody reacts a way to you that feels so personal and you want to take it offensive, that it has 9 times out of 10 to deal with them than it has to even deal with you. So
well, I feel like the responsibility of them communicating with, like, again, that trust, right? So like what you were saying too, if you already knew how Abby was going to feel, like, or how she's going to react, it's you stop coming to them. There's the trust is weakening, and therefore the communication then weakens, and therefore then after that there is just no communication, and then now it's a more empty relationship. You know what I mean? Because the feelings or whatever they need from you in that business relationship, whatever she needed from you, was never communicated to you. It was communicated to everyone else other than the person that could actually do something about it. And I think that's a huge and very common shortcoming of people in relationships, business or otherwise, that they don't go to the source and say, hey, this is what I need from you going forward so that I can feel more confident in what we're doing here. And sometimes it's something little as that. There was a time where when you're doing like business emails and it was literally you ended the email with NRN. You guys know what that stands for?
I do.
Yeah, no response or no reply needed.
Oh.
But yeah, I think it was when electronic mail first started.
Electronic mail. Wow. Don't date yourself
I
there.
think it's one of those things. It's like, because it was one of those things where it's like you send an email, you read it, and maybe it wasn't a read receipt or whatever, they get that response back. But then it's like, they're like, did you get my email? And you're like, yeah, I read it. I'm already working on it. We're like, well, it would have been nice if you would have told me that. You know what I mean? But it was one of those things. Is like you just tell someone, it's almost expected. But as soon as that trust is kind of wavering at that point, you almost need more of that. Hey, I need you to tell me that you got the message. And got the message can be business. It can be romantic. It can be friendship. It can be whatever.
Any level.
I deal with that a ton at work.
Yeah, it's like you need to be able to just at least, like, when you're talking to someone, like, you're just staring at me, just at least nod. Tell me, like, show me that you heard what I just asked you to do, or what you need from me. Like, so there is that communication. I think that's a lot of this, is that we're talking about active listening. It's communication, as we talk about on this podcast a lot, especially in Beyond the BS, part 2. It's the active communication. There's actions to be involved, and not just don't get comfortable so that you assume that you know how they're going to respond, and don't get comfortable that you assume that they're not listening to you. Because as soon as that happens, the trust is gone. The relationship, whatever the capacity is, will then start to diminish.
I think,
and then you're again in that quicksand, because you're no longer putting the effort in to make sure you're getting the most out of that personal interaction.
I think that's huge in where we are right now as a society when it comes to work, because there's a lot of people out there that are working remote and they're not in an office. And so they can't see you. They don't know that you're working on a project. So one of the sales reps that I support, when I first started supporting him, because of his past experiences with other people in my team that are no longer on my team, he wasn't sure that I was actually doing everything that was coming in.
Yeah.
But then once, he saw that without him asking, everything that was coming in, I was working on, he was able to trust me a lot more, to where now when he asks me if I got an email, he's not asking it because he doesn't know whether or not I'm working on it. He doesn't know if the person who sent it actually sent it to me, and wants to make sure that I got that email to work on that.
Yep.
So he trusts me that whenever something new comes in, he knows I'm going to work on it. Yeah. He just wants to make sure that the person, and it's because that person has a tendency to not include me on an email. He wants to make sure that I've got it, so that way it gets worked and he can respond to
covering all the bases at that point.
And that's so important what you're saying in a business environment, because we oftentimes want to place blame and shift blame, especially right now when we don't see people.
Yeah.
And it's really important to ask the question, like, why did you include me on this? Why did you just lend just a small bit of small bit of space for the other person to respond? Because I know, especially for me personally, sometimes I take everything fucking offensively. I'm always on the defense about absolutely everything. And so I'm like, what the fuck did I do now? That's just my response to things. But taking a step back, and I have an amazing manager, somebody I've worked with over the last few years, that every time I come to that conclusion and I talk to her about it, she's like, well, why don't you reach out to that person? You shouldn't spend the whole weekend thinking about that. Why don't you ask them X, Y, and Z? And I'm like, you're right. I should, because oftentimes I feel like it's not worth asking because I don't want to confront the situation. Oftentimes I don't want to confront the situation because I don't want to hear the answer, or I'm just afraid of the answer, whatever that answer may be. But if we confront it or just have a difficult conversation, 9 times out of 10, we feel 100% better, at least as women, 100% better out of that conversation, even if it was difficult. Way better than what I felt going into it.
But it feels easier to sit over the weekend and stew in it, even though it's a lose-lose at that point. Because you say confront, it's address, right? So it's again, going back to, no, I mean, but I get the point. It's addressing it or confronting it or whatever, like however you're taking it. But you know, you're already diving into what I was going to get into a little bit on the closing remarks is taking offense on either side of the situation. You take offense to it. Yeah, it's easier to stew, you know, sit there and just be like upset about it. Because again, there's you're offended by it, you're upset. There's now all of a sudden emotion when there doesn't need to be emotion. And then you get to the point where you're not going to address the situation or address what is upsetting you or offended you or whatever. And therefore you stew on it from Friday night till Monday morning. You walk back in on Monday morning or virtually walk back in these days. And you log on to that fucking Zoom call. And the next thing you know, you're sitting there, you're still stewing in it.
Yeah.
And so you have to at least speak up. You have to at least address or pull that person. Hey, can I talk to you for a second?
Yep.
You have to take action.
I've been known to throw it back sometimes at people because some of the brokers that I deal with, like they may send a request and not include me on it, and then like 4 days later they're like, "Hey, do you have an ETA on this?" And I'll go, "This is the first time I'm seeing this email. You didn't include me on it." And depending on what the request is, I'll be like, first I'm seeing it, you know, I'll have it for you tomorrow or 2 days, whatever the processes are for that specific request. Like, one, first I'm seeing it. Two, here's when you can expect something back.
Well, that's let me tie that into just an everyday type of a, you know, typical personal relationship, right? A significant other, and they feel like they don't address it, right? They don't confront it, as Alaina was saying, and they just drop hints. You know what I mean? They're dropping hints about the fact that, you know, like,
just tell me.
Say you never go into like a room or a closet or whatever, and the light bulb's out, right? And you don't do it. You don't know the light bulb's out or whatever. There's a problem with the light switch or whatever. And you know, they're just like, they just walk, they go into that room, and then they huff and puff, and they walk back out of that room, and there's yeah. And then like weeks later, they're like, "So are you ever going to fix that?" And you're like, "Fix what?" Kind of same thing, right? He's like, "Fix what?" Like the light bulb in the closet. And you're like, "Which closet are you talking about?" The closet where you know, I have my coats. And you're like, "I didn't know it was out." Well, obviously I've been upset about it for the last 4 weeks. And you're like, "I didn't know what you were upset about. So I just
best guess.
The best guess. I thought it was something else. I addressed that.
You're also smart enough to know not to ask, "What's wrong?"
Nothing. All right. So
Nothing.
Also, to the people who say nothing, it is your fucking responsibility to elaborate. No. I am a woman, so I am very familiar with this topic. If you say nothing's wrong, listen, bitch. You are just as responsible for this fucking conversation as the other person is, because just men are not.
It's not a relationship thing. She says this to me too. Just FYI.
Yeah, but like,
I feel like Tanya's on the podcast. Jesus.
But people are not responsible for guessing your emotions. So if you tell them that nothing is wrong, then I can only assume nothing is fucking wrong. If something is wrong, then be like, "I know something is wrong. I can't talk about it right now. I don't know when I can talk about it, but I will talk about it as soon." I don't know what the fuck else you want to phrase it, but either way, be like, "You're a fucking asshole. I want you to eat shit, but also I'll talk to you in 24 hours. That is a better solution than being like
very aggressive sentences.
Or if you ask on a further sense, if you ask, you know, like what's on your mind, what's wrong type thing, which is the tough question to ask.
Yeah.
And they say, "I don't want to talk about it right now."
Yeah.
And you're sitting there, you're like, "I don't know what it is." So now I know there's something wrong.
Yeah, but you have to figure out what it is.
Give me.
But it's not your responsibility, though.
Where should I look for it? You know what I mean?
Probably the closet with the broken light.
God damn it.
Yes. It's whatever is creepy. Whatever the scream is outside that you're like, "I shouldn't go that direction, but I'm going to open the door to the outside." That's it. That's it.
And then when they're upset and they start talking about the murder podcast they just listened to, it's like, should I be worried?
You're like, also, if you don't stop fucking up, you're going to be that murder podcast.
Right,
So
right.
have a good night.
Hey, I just listened to a podcast
Calm
about
the
perfect
fuck
murder. Like,
down.
oh, did you? Did you?
Now let's watch Gone Girl.
They've never been caught. All right, so closing remarks. Ladies, let's start with you. I'll let you guys decide who wants to do the closing remarks first.
What are our closing remarks about?
Part 2.
Everything. Oh, just part
Active
2.
listening. Yes.
I'll go first. I think for me, active listening is my biggest area of growth
Yes.
as a person. I think that I can do better. I think that I should do better. And when it comes to situations of me as the speaker, as someone who needs a person to actively listen to me, I think that I can do better as a person to explain what I need from the conversation. Do I need your advice? Do I need you just to listen? Do I need you to listen and absorb and then in a few days tell me what you think? Do I need you to just be angry with me or share the emotion, that kind of thing?
Yeah.
So active listening for me is a big area of growth, and it has taught me to be more explicit in what I need.
It's good. I like that.
Yeah.
Alaina?
So it has taught me to oftentimes over the years I have found myself to hear things and I want to fix. So I have tried to I just try to respond to everybody differently. Like just the other day I was at a friend's house and he was telling me about him and his boyfriend's just I won't even say issues, but just some things that were going on in their life. And I said, "Do you want my feedback?"
Oh.
And he was like, "Yeah, no, absolutely. I want your feedback." Like that's, and I said, "No, I don't mean in the sense of like, am I valuable to give you feedback? It's more or less like, do you really, right. Like, is that what you want right now is to have feedback?" And so I have just been really trying to show up in different ways. And I always feel like I'm pretty non-judgmental because my life is a total clusterfuck. So I literally cannot throw judgment at anyone humanly possible.
Cheers.
You could, yes, I literally cheers to that. Cheers to my life being an absolute clusterfuck.
Wait, I went in on this. Cheers.
Yes, cheers. Because I cannot even, like, the most fucked up story you will ever tell me, I will be like, yeah, that's not that bad. That's not that bad.
Cheers.
We don't need your level up, Alaina. We just need your active listening. Thank you.
No, absolutely. But no, and I think it's just helped me show up for people in different ways. And to the point I was talking about me and Abby earlier, I've also not very vulnerable. And so I've learned in our relationship, I told her like recently, I was like, I really appreciate these ways that you've shown up for me in our relationship up to this point. And it has meant a lot to me. I literally just think I texted her yesterday. I was like, you have done X, Y, and Z for me, and no one else has done that for me. And I really appreciate that. That was very difficult for me to say because I'm not a super emotional or vulnerable person. But
neither of us are.
no, but it showed her A, how you can show up for me, and B, that I appreciate it. And it means so much to me that I have learned and grown from what you've shown me. And it grows the friendship and the relationship. And that is literally, I don't know, that's like the beauty of all the things that we're doing right now and talking to each other, friendship, relationship, whatever it looks like. Like if we can keep learning and growing from each other, like that's half the fucking battle at this point, especially online and not even being able to interact in person.
Absolutely. Yes. All right.
Yeah.
Nate, Josh.
Yeah. I'll head this one up.
I was about to say I went first last time. So
yeah.
All right, Josh, get in there.
Active listening. I think that each one of us can take this and learn and grow from this. But I think that as the topic of active listening is the biggest opportunity for all of us to take from it and grow. And I think the biggest key out of everything that everyone has said tonight is communication.
Yes.
And that in this opportunity of growth and listening, that if we learn to communicate on both sides of it as the active listener and as going to somebody expecting them to actively listen to us, that if we can communicate what we want out of that, going into the situation expecting an answer or expecting advice out of it, that communication is key in this. And I think that overall, that we as people, as human beings, if we just communicate exactly what we want, easier said than done, that we're going to get better results, and that we're going to be able to learn and live together as human beings, as people, a lot better. And a wise man once told me that if you listen to your board of directors, if you form a board of directors, you're going to be better off. And so, I leave you with that, to actively communicate to those people the value, right, that they have in their life. I think Alaina alluded to that. Reach out to that person and say, hey, I appreciate you for this, and this, and what you've done in my life. And I want to hear more from you on certain topics, that you're going to be a lot better off, and you're going to be able to heed their advice in the future. So
love it. It. Nate?
I'm glad I had my notebook to write my stuff down.
Well, I am too, buddy.
Wait, let's see the Notebook.
No.
The movie?
No, I don't like it.
I've watched that enough.
Number one stolen DVD from Blockbuster, by the way.
All right, go to your notebook there.
So,
Blockbuster?
Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
So if for those that are listening to this, I think the first key is to realize whether or not you are someone who is an active listener or not.
Okay.
And if step one is realizing whether or not you are or not. And you have to realize that if someone is coming to you with an issue, it's more about them than it is you. Because they have, there's a reason why they're coming to you with that issue. And if you're not an active listener, the first question you have to ask yourself is, how do you break that pattern? How do you become an active listener? And I think part of it, again, realizing it's about them more than it is about you.
Mm-hmm.
And then start by asking rather than telling. Asking questions rather than just spewing out answers or advice. Because that shows that you are listening to them, or you're wanting clarification of what they are saying. Like you're focusing on what they're saying. You're not necessarily trying to get, minute details, but you're not, focusing too much on the wrong thing. If it helps, ask whether they want your advice or they just want you to listen.
Sure.
We've touched on that quite a bit, but that is something that's important, because if you actually ask them what they want, then that tells you what you need to provide. Are you providing an ear, or are you providing a response? And it all depends on the situation. And sometimes being there for that person is more important than anything you're going to say to them.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're coming to you because you are on their board of directors or something like that. You are a close friend. They trust you. There's a reason why they are coming to you. It may not necessarily be for advice. It's because they want you to hear. And then possibly as it goes on, then if you are listening, that gives you the doorway to then offer advice if needed.
Nice.
I think I actually summed up my last 2 points and all that.
I love it.
Short and sweet.
Go.
All right, Steve, let us hear it.
This is a full-time job. This is active listening is never. We talked about it tonight. I'm sitting here reflecting on the conversation in part 2. And we continue to talk about when someone comes to you or when you go to someone else. Mm-hmm. This is constant. The communication is constant. That's something that I am going to continue to work on, and I encourage everyone else to do the same. Is that this is when you wake up in the morning, you're actively listening to the people, especially that are important to you, whether it be a significant other, a person you see every day at work. It's just people you. If you're like a Starbucks person, you go in there and you're talking to a person, they're paid to ask you how your day is going. Ask them how their day is going. This is just a lifestyle. You're an open book, and you're putting action out there constantly when you interact with people. I want to get better, and I again encourage everyone that you are consistently actively listening. This is a new way of thinking. This is something that when someone comes to you with a problem, it's not that you already know what they're dealing with, but hopefully your interactions with them prior to them coming to you, you could actually listen to them as they're going through it, and as they are, whether they're stewing on it, whether they're reflecting, or the things that they're saying. The person that is walking through, to my silly example of the fact that the light's out in the closet, you're actually watching them. You're observing what is going on, and the people that are around you, what's going on in their lives that are possibly starting to wear them down, starting to be a little nitpick type of a thing that you're like, I see what you're going through. Hey, did you notice that bothered you? They don't, maybe right away. So before it builds up, you are there and you're listening to them through their actions, through their the things that they say, the things that they do. And you're constantly just every day being there for the other person before. And if it gets to the point where they need to talk, that's fine. But hopefully there's been the groundwork. Sometimes when you wait until there is a problem, or they realize that there's a problem, or you realize that there's a problem, this could have been helped with constant reinforcement of understanding and listening to what they're going through. Mm-hmm. And the same thing goes for each of us, that you put yourself out there. Don't bottle it up. Try to lead by example, not only in listening, but also in communicating on the other side of it, so that it doesn't build up to you where you're looking for an active listener with a problem, that you're working on things day to day. Literally, you wake up in the morning and you are out there for yourself, but also just as important for the other people that are important to you.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. You take care of it on a everyday, every moment level, and try to get out of your own head so that you can have your ears and eyes and heart open, that you can be there for people before it becomes too big of a problem for them to bear, or vice versa for you to bear. So I think the active listening is a lifestyle. It's not a situational thing, which is, I think, where I went into this as a situational thing. And as I listened to all of you and as we had this discussion, it is a lifestyle where you need to constantly be open for communication on both sides of it. And active listening is a very, very important part of that. So I'll leave you guys with that, is that every day you guys go through life, consistently be open to the people around you, and be open to yourself, so that you can hope that the people that you're surrounding yourself with, whether it be the board of directors when you have a situation, or just the person that you interact with on the street, the person you wake up next to, that you are involved, you are engaged consistently, because I think every day will bring more joy to you and the people around you if you are active.
100%.
So with that, thank you to Tinder Box at Easton, Altadis USA, BS Cigar Company, patreon.com/Bourbon and BS podcast, Bourbon and Blondes. Check them out. You guys are amazing. We are very flattered that you guys took time out of your evening to be with us tonight, and everyone listening tonight and everyone listening to the audio. You guys are amazing. This community is fantastic. Bourbon and BS community page on Facebook. If you guys aren't a part of it yet, join it, because there's great conversation and great just examples of people enjoying life. And there's always an opportunity to create relationships with people that aren't in your everyday life, but you can reach out to them, especially this day and age where a lot of it, unfortunately, is virtual. Hopefully we'll get back to it, but don't lose those relationships. Guys, cheers. Happy Whiskey Wednesday.
Cheers.
Beer at this point.
Thank you very much.